And hello again, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of My Isolation Podcast. And today, it's the Indies retrospective, and well, Alex is officially back.
Hello, it's me.
Yeah, so yeah, it's that introduction is so cool. it's
Hello, it's me. Yeah, I mean, what do you want me to say? Like,
is it me?
unfortunately, we all can't be as cool as Indiana Jones, Connor.
Oh god, no, Indiana Jones. That guy is like smooth.
He's pretty cool.
He's pretty cool.
He gets to go on the big plane and
Oh,
go around to different places and collect artifacts.
all right. So
Yes.
yeah, how you been? How you been, Alex? How's life been since the last time you were here?
Yeah, life's life. It's good. Yeah, I've
Mm.
got no real major complaints. I've just had my birthday this weekend, so that was nice.
Oh, that's good. Oh, that's really good, actually.
Yeah, that's kind
Did you
it's
get out
kind of the biggest thing that's happened to me.
yeah, the big 3-0?
Did I get? Yeah, I did. I did a couple of things like around my birthday, but I didn't do
Yeah.
anything big this year because to
Mm.
be honest with you, I was just glad to have the time off work.
I mean, time off work for your birthday. I mean, that's quite important, I'd imagine.
Yeah, but I got quite a lot of time off, which is great.
All right, so this is how the retrospectives. How I usually do them. We just talk about the films one by one. So for this one, start off with Raiders, Temple, your Crusades, and then your Skull, and then you get to the Crystal Skull very last.
Oh
Just
yes,
just briefly talk about. Well, we'll just talk about
we
each
have to
film.
save the best for last, Connor.
The best for last. The best for last. And then at the end, we'll just talk about Dial of Destiny, what our hopes for it, and what we're hoping happen, and maybe talk briefly about the critical reception it's gotten thus far. Because oh boy, the critical reception is not.
Hmm.
It's not what Catherine Kennedy
It's been
was.
interesting.
It's not what Kathleen Kennedy was looking for. Let's just say that.
For me, it was interesting, but not surprising, and
Mm,
I'll go into that more later.
mm. All right, so let's start off with the one that started it all. Raiders of the Lost
Well,
Ark. I mean, where do we even? How do you even start this? I mean, this is probably quintessentially one of the greatest action movies to ever really be made in the
I
history
would
of
even
cinema.
go as far to say that it's pretty much a perfect film.
Oh yeah.
I generally can't think of anything that's wrong with the film.
Oh no, me neither. To be honest,
A rewatching it. I mean, I'm gonna get it out of the gate. This is my personal favorite of the original three as well.
oh right,
Um, I just really enjoy everything about this film. I think it does a good job setting up Indiana Jones as a character. The opening
mm,
sort of cold open is
yeah,
really good. It's probably one of the most like classic cinema moments of all time.
mm.
And I don't think, even though the other Indiana Jones films did similar things at the beginning, I don't think they'll ever match that first one.
Oh god, no. Like,
Um,
it,
it's just perfect. It says everything up about Indiana Jones as a character,
mm,
and and then even setting up his rivalry with Belloc and stuff, and like just
mm.
everything about it is perfect. And obviously that scene with the boulder. I mean,
I,
it's yeah. I
it,
mean, come on, you can't go wrong with it. The
it's.
whole thing is great.
I mean, that scene's been parodied to death at this point. Like the Boulder, like you've
I mean,
it's iconic. It's iconic. It's just a guy running away from
oh
a
yeah, yeah.
boulder, but it's how do you make that iconic? I have no idea, but Spielberg found a
I
way.
think I think what makes it so iconic is that if you look back at like the behind the scenes, that was obviously a real thing that happened,
Hmm.
and
Oh
it's something we forget now with CGI being so prevalent in cinema nowadays. Is that that kind of thing wasn't possible to do in computer animation, so they just did it with practical effects,
yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
and it looks good. It looks incredible, so even still to this day. It looks because it is a real boulder. It looks like Indiana Jones is actually running away from a giant boulder trying to crush him.
Hmm.
And I
Yeah.
don't know. It's just like I mean, obviously, we should talk about much like with because obviously both George Lucas and Steven Spielberg play a big part in the Indiana Jones
Oh
films.
yeah. I mean,
And yeah, sorry, go on.
good old Georgie boy. You know how it is. Good old Georgie Lucas.
Where
But no,
we love him.
they both played a really big part. Like I mean, George Lucas and Spielberg are mates in real life. Well, they're best friends. So
Hmm.
I mean, it was pretty much inevitable they were
Yeah,
gonna.
they've known each other for a long time.
So it was inevitable they were gonna do something together, and I'm glad it was Indiana Jones. Uh,
Well, I think the thing to remember is as well, obviously, is that both Steven Spielberg and George Lucas obviously grew up watching like old adventure serials,
yeah,
from like the 1980s that were based on like characters from like comic books and like novels that were very popular in the 1930s. So
yeah.
So obviously that was also the inspiration for Star Wars as well.
Mm, yeah.
Those sort of all like things like Flash Gordon and like a bunch of other stuff were inspirations for them. And obviously Indiana Jones is the same. It's based on like those sort of old World War II serials that were about globe-trotting adventures and all that kind of stuff. And obviously that's a major influence into what the feel of Indiana Jones. But it's obviously still its own unique thing at the same time because it's
Mm,
got that sort of that modern day well at the time modern day sheen that like that Steven Spielberg was doing with all of his films, and it just yeah, it's
mm.
creates one of three of the best films of all time.
Yeah.
And yeah, well, we'll get to the fourth one later.
We'll get to
But
the
yeah,
fourth
no,
one later. But yeah, this I mean, Raiders Lost Ark. I mean, this is a classic. Like this is,
mm,
like it's just you're right, but the cold open it does set up the character really well because you know the fact that he's got his back turned to the audience, people are a bit like, who is this man? Who is this guy? Um, and and you know, and then he gets the whip out and he kind of knocks the gun out of the guy's hand and he steps through the darkness and you see him and you're like, ooh, this is interesting.
that's such a cool reveal of the character because
Yeah.
it makes him sort of like really mysterious, but also kind of sinister, but also cool at the same time. And like the fact that he uses a whip as a weapon is also a really unique thing.
Mm.
It's just like I love it when a character has a unique gimmick that they have.
Yeah.
Like, they could have just given Indiana Jones a revolver and like that's all he really does.
Mm.
But then he'd just be kind of like a cowboy. It's the whip that
Mm.
makes Indiana Jones. Indy's whip is basically like Luke's lightsaber.
Yeah. Oh,
Basic
yeah. Yeah.
in essence, it's his unique thing that makes him. It makes him a character. And I
Mm.
know characters are more than just the stuff they use, but with Indiana Jones, like the whip is who is him, along
Mm.
with the hat and the gun as well, and like all a bunch of other stuff. But yeah,
Mm.
the whip in particular is the big thing.
Yeah, I like how as well with this is something that with pretty much all the indie films did, where there's another character that gets introduced, but he's got a backstory, but you never really see the backstory. Like with in this film, we get introduced to him and then Balak, so you know that there's a rivalry between those two, but you never actually like get told
Yeah.
what the rivalry is. All we know is that they keep it in mystery, they keep it surrounded, and same thing with him and Marion's past. I mean, you get a glimpse into what happened with them, where
Well, you
yeah.
get a glimpse of a very problematic past with the fact that Indiana Jones was basically an adult when he met Marion, and then
Yeah.
they had a thing when she was very young,
Mm.
and I think it's something that obviously at the time, not even just in the 1930s when the films were set, but even in the 80s, that kind of romance was still quite common.
Mm.
And it's only in recent years that it's become like really frowned upon to have those kinds of like because it's essentially grooming.
Yeah.
But it's weird to look. But that was the one thing about the film that looking back on it was a bit like, wow, that's really a product of its time. But a bunch with the few other stuff as well.
Oh,
But
yeah.
I
Yeah.
think at the same time, what I really love about the both Indiana Jones and the thing, this is something that I think the first film does really well above the others, is that Indiana Jones in this film and in this film in particular is very much not a hero. He's
Yeah.
very much a an anti-hero. His goals are pretty much he is a good guy, as it were, but his goals are very much personal. Like
Mm.
his goal is to collect artifacts for either the museum or potentially some kind of like monetary value down the line.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much what those types of explorers back in the day did do these things for. It
Mm.
was so it's pretty accurate, and I like the fact that Belloc is kind of the same way. The only
Yeah.
thing that makes him more evil in Indiana Jones really is the fact that he teams up with Nazis,
Yeah.
which fair enough.
Yeah.
I think we can all agree that that does make you pretty evil, but
Yeah. Oh, especially
I like that
exactly.
contrast where, yeah,
Mm. No,
it makes Indiana Jones a much more interesting character.
yeah, exactly. And I mean, his costume as well. I mean, just quickly, I mean, it's iconic. I mean, it's just like it's so simple. It's like a regular shirt, a leather jacket, a fedora hat. But there's something about it where he
Mm.
just pulls it off. I think it's just Harrison
Well, I
Ford.
think it's because yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's Harrison Ford. Harrison Ford is what makes Indiana Jones Indiana Jones. 100%. I don't think you could cast anyone else as Indiana Jones and it'd have the same effect. Even if they
Yeah.
look exactly like Harrison Ford, it's not just the look of Harrison Ford, it's his acting style and his charisma, his
Mm.
natural charisma as an actor.
Yeah.
He can just do all of that works so well with the character of Indiana Jones that I can literally cannot picture anyone else doing it.
Oh God,
Not at the
yeah.
moment anyway.
I mean, we'll see what happens when after that Destiny comes out, and Lucasfilm
Well,
will probably end up rebooting it with another actor. which they will. They
That's
will.
yeah,
Like
they will.
Disney will be like, nah, mate, let's go.
They shouldn't, but they will.
They will. Even though Dial Destiny is set to only make 60 million opening weekend, but oof, we'll talk about that in a later time.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, we'll talk about that later,
Um,
and we'll need to see the film ourselves as well.
yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, so yeah, one thing I like about Belloc though, like again, this was like I've talked about villains in the past, and I just love how pure evil Belloc is. He's just greedy. He's just a very greedy scoundrel who
Well,
who's
I don't really
yeah.
think I don't think Belak is pure evil, to be honest with you. I do think he's very much got, he definitely has a very sort of like lack of morals, 100%. But
Mm,
this is what I mean, where I say him and Indiana Jones as characters really contrast well with each other, which is that Belloc is, yeah, a bad guy in comparison to Indiana Jones, but their motivations are very similar. It just comes down to who they decide to work with. Like Indiana Jones won't work with a Nazi because he doesn't like Nazis for
mm,
whatever his reasons are, which aren't really specified in the films, but
yeah.
you can guess why he
Oh
probably
yeah. I
doesn't like
mean,
Nazis.
well, I mean, I don't think you really have to specify why characters doesn't like Nazis. To be honest.
Well, I mean, a lot of people back in the day hated Nazis, but didn't really understand why they hated Nazis.
Oh really?
They were just like, "Oh yeah, Nazis are the bad guys." Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's just because a lot of the information around the concentration camps and the stuff that they were actually doing to Jewish people, while it was sort of known about, the full
Mm,
extent of the details of how far it was going was not revealed to the public for a very long until after the war had finished, as in like the end, like 1945. I mean,
oh wow.
so it became a thing where it's now we know in hindsight what the Nazis were about, but a lot of people at the time weren't fully aware.
Mm,
And also, like, not information doesn't travel in the same way it does nowadays back in that era. So a lot of people probably didn't know the full extent of how far it went for a while.
yeah.
But
Uh.
still,
Oh wow.
Indiana Jones probably did know about it because he's a very educated and very,
Oh yeah.
broadly traveled individual. I mean, yeah, I mean that's another thing that makes Indiana Jones a cool character is he's not just an action man. He also has like some semblance of intelligence and education, and obviously we know he's a professor of archaeology at what museum is it again? Does he say?
Uh.
Did they say what museum?
Which
Oh no,
universe?
sorry, what university it is? In fact,
Let me just see
is
quickly.
it like Washington?
I think so. Let me just have a quick look. In Indiana Jones University, Marshall College, I think.
Marshall College. And
Yeah.
where is Marshall College?
uh, let me just. I'm just gonna go with
Unless
it.
it's a made up one.
Unless they made it
It
up,
could be made up.
it could be. Um, like who's Marshall? Why is he have a college? No idea. Let's see.
Marshall College, Marshall University,
He
West
re-
Virginia.
his research is funded by Marshall College, a fictional school named after producer
Ah,
Frank Marshall,
there we go.
where he is professor of archaeology. He studied under archaeologist Abner Ravenwood at the University of Chicago. Yeah,
Of
so
course,
it's
yeah, that
basically
mate.
so
Of course, yeah, because that's obviously a big plot point.
basically they made it up.
Yeah,
It doesn't exist. The
yeah,
Marshall
that's fine.
College does
That's
not
fine then.
actually.
Um, but another thing we should talk about with Indiana Jones, just to kind of
Yeah.
cap off the first intro. So obviously he gets the golden idol. That
Mm.
guy, the Doc Ock from Spider-Man 2, tries to betray him,
Yeah, yeah.
but
It's
then obviously gets caught in the trap.
Alpha Molina in his first, not
Yeah,
first big
it was one
major
of his
role.
one. No,
No.
well, yeah, that was definitely one of the first roles he was
Yeah,
he was in quite a
yeah,
lot massive film. Yeah, but
yeah,
so he does that, and then obviously Belloc takes the idol from him, and then
yeah,
Indiana Jones runs away from the natives.
yeah. And then we
He
find
gets in the
out,
seaplane.
and then obviously there's a snake, and he's like, "Why is there a snake?" And you find out he's
Yeah.
scared of snakes.
Even great Indiana Jones has a weakness:
Oh yeah,
snakes,
which is
which is
fucking.
nice.
I mean,
It's nice to give your characters weaknesses. I like that.
but I mean,
Conflicts.
As a fellow Australian, I can relate to his fear of snakes because
Mm.
snakes are dangerous and they're very scary, and I do not like snakes at all.
Oh, I don't mind them. They're all right. I mean, I wouldn't like get near one if it was going to bite me, but I've
Oh
not
god,
got like anything personally wrong with them.
yeah,
But then, of course, after Indiana Jones manages to escape and return to good old US of A, we are thrown into the actual plot of the film, which is
yeah.
obviously
He,
Jones trying to recover the Ark of the Covenant,
mm.
which has been found in an excavation site in Egypt, if I remember correctly, something like that.
Yeah, yeah, it was, yeah. It is interesting. Like it kind of sets up the fact that Indiana Jones likes to go after particularly religious artifacts, which is very interesting.
Well, I don't think it's just religious artifacts. I think it's artifacts of great like historical or cultural importance.
Yeah,
Ark of the Covenant is like big thing in Christianity and early Abrahamic religions in general. Like this sort of box or like a coffin or something like that. I forgot exactly what it is. Very
yeah,
ceremonial, and obviously it's supposed to be a way to communicate with God.
mm,
And it's said to hold great power. And obviously even in Indiana Jones, he doesn't really believe in superstitious stuff like that. But to
mm,
him, even if it does exist, the value on it is exponential, and the research and you could learn from history and culture from that is pretty significant. So
mm.
it's understandable.
Oh
But
yeah,
obviously, he's asked to do this by two army intelligence officers, if I remember correctly, because
yeah,
they're obviously the Nazis are looking for it.
yeah, and you don't want the Nazis getting hold of that. Like, you,
I don't
yeah,
even think. Well, I think this is kind of the weird thing about this in a weird way because this is set in 1936,
yeah,
and I don't think America was really like worried about the Nazis at this stage in history.
mm,
I don't think so, really. So it kind of is a little bit historically inaccurate, but I mean, it's Indiana Jones. He's literally gonna go for a box that can shoot fire out of it, so who cares?
yeah.
Um,
Well, Indiana Jones
but yeah,
was,
and then
yeah. No, so you
mhm,
continue. You continue.
yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. Oh no, but yeah, that's kind of it, really. So then
Yeah.
that kind of literally kickstarts off the whole plot of the film,
Mm. What I like about
basically.
what I like about these movies in general is that they take things, they take actual like artifacts from history, but they sort of I wouldn't say fantasize, but they kind of like go like what the artifacts can do to you, like the power that they have is a bit
Well,
exaggerated,
they don't
maybe.
make it too. What? Sorry.
Like, would you say
Sorry.
exaggerated or like because obviously the Ark of the Covenant,
I would
yeah,
say it creates definitely the first three films, not so much. Well, actually, the first two films. I think the third one is definitely where it starts to push the boundary between myth and reality.
yeah,
Where in the first film in particular, I know technically all the Nazis get killed at the end of the film. Spoiler if you didn't know
yeah,
that, by the Ark of the Covenant, but the mystical elements are still kind of necessarily unknown. They're not very exact in how they work,
mm,
and it creates a sort of like element of there being there are some things which man was not meant to tamper with.
yeah. There's
And Indiana Jones learns his lesson multiple times throughout the film, throughout all three films, really. That there are some artifacts and some things that are not worth pursuing because obviously the power that they wield is beyond human recognition, and they don't have. They're not, it's not just like a gold statue or something like that. It's something of great, like like importance to the world to the world in general. So they definitely play with that a lot. But I definitely think by the end of three moving in Last Crusade moving into Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, they basically just go, yeah, magic's real and
yeah.
aliens are real and everything
Mm.
supernatural is real.
Oh yeah,
Which I don't think I like as much as the first two films, which I think leave things a little bit more vague as to exactly what it is.
yeah. Like
But
they kind of leave it as a bit of a mystery, where it's like, where they don't really go into too much of what they can do.
no,
Yeah,
no, exactly. Like,
yeah.
I know that the Ark kills all the Nazis at the end of the film,
Oh
but
yeah.
is that really God doing that, or is it something else entirely, something beyond humans
Mm.
even being able to understand exactly what it is? Same
Yeah.
thing within the Temple of Doom, like all the voodoo gods,
Mm.
like that. They're sort of like not really specifically explained how far their power can go, and how is it that the leader of the cult is able to use their power.
Yeah.
Whereas in Last Crusade, it's pretty evident that this guy's a Templar. He drank the Holy Grail,
Mm.
and he's immortal. It's
Yeah.
just very straightforward in comparison to the others. But anyway, we're
Mm.
getting off topic.
Yeah. So he gets asked to retrieve this the Ark of the Covenant, and
Mhm.
he has to go see Marion because her father knew all about it, and him and his father are falling out, um, and turns out her father's now dead, uh,
Mhm.
which
Oh
is
yeah, exactly.
which is
Yeah, yeah,
very
yeah.
bleak.
And also, but that's kind of the point, really, isn't it? It
Yeah.
shows once again, it kind
Mm.
of shows that Indiana Jones has kind of got, he can be a bit of a shitty guy, to be honest with you.
Oh yeah.
Like
Like he's flawed and yeah.
him and yeah, him and Marion talk about how he she was very young when her and Indiana Jones first started seeing each other, and he kind of manipulated her a little bit.
Yeah,
And obviously, after they broke up, he didn't even bother to contact them, so he didn't even know that the guy who basically taught him everything that he knows has died.
yeah,
Like, it kind of makes Indiana Jones look like a bit of a shitty person, which I think is a consistent theme through this film in particular. Is that Indiana Jones is he's a good guy, but he's got a lot of moral ambiguity about him. And he will do things if it means it can give him a bit of an advantage, which
mm,
I like as a character. It makes him more interesting than him just being a
yeah.
total just goody two shoes.
Oh yeah, like
Really.
I feel like some of the best characters really are the ones who have the deepest kind of flaws with them. I
Hmm.
think, and I feel like that's something that all three films kind of delved into. Kind of did delve into, specifically Last Crusade, where they revealed the kind of rocky relationship he has with his dad, and even to a degree, King of the Crystal Skull, where they delved into he has a son, he didn't know about his son, and so he's trying to learn how to be kind of a dad kind of on the
I
fly.
will talk about Crystal Skull
Yeah.
eventually. Yeah,
Um,
great.
but does yeah,
um,
but it does unlock. But then obviously you get that
excuse
pretty
me.
cool. That's all right. You get that really cool action sequence later on with the Nazis going to Marion's bar, and then you get that. It's really quite.
Yeah, I mean, I
Mm,
mean, yeah,
s-
I mean, obviously Indiana Jones goes there to get the medallion that will go on the Staff of Ra that can
yeah.
locate where the Ark will be in Egypt.
Mm,
But I think another thing we should talk about with this scene is kind of two major things.
yeah.
One is that Gestapo agent
Mm.
is like, I think, one of the best villains in cinema. He is
Oh
pure
yeah.
evil.
He is pure evil. Yeah.
He is genuinely an evil, evil, nasty person
Mm,
who enjoys torturing people and is just a generally unpleasant person to just watch be on screen. And the guy who
yeah.
played him, I'll see actually who played him. I'll just have a quick look.
Yeah.
He was played by Ronald Lacey is
Oh
his
wow.
name. And he was an English actor, and he did a very good job actually in
Oh
his
yeah.
accent. Oh my God, he was in Porridge.
It was
God,
in
of course he
porridge.
was.
Damn.
Yeah, the great series Porridge. Listeners, if you're interested in 1970s comedies, watch Porridge.
Good old porridge.
um, Good old Porridge, man, is great.
Yeah.
But also what I love in this scene as well is it highlights one of the things one of the best things about Indiana Jones series as a whole. The sound effects are incredible.
Oh yeah. Like the sound of
That
they're like.
that gun sound effect
It's
and then punch sound effects are
mm,
just god damn. They don't even sound realistic, but they
yeah.
sound so good.
This sounds
They
so good.
sound the punching effect that they have, like the effect of like the sound they create is just
Oh yeah.
incredible. Every time I hear that gun sound effect, I'm like, oh, I love it. I
It
love it
just
so much.
it just screams 80s, doesn't it? Those sound effects. Even
Yeah.
like it's amazing how like these films, even like little things, like even the sound effects can like give you a really can contribute to making the experience a lot more better. And I feel like there's a reason why they
Uh
brought
huh.
those sound effects back to Crystal Skull, and I'm assuming Dial of Destiny because I've heard some of them in the trailers. So because they're just that good really, and they help impact the world, and they're very
Well, it's
crunchy
gotten
and
to the
gritty.
stage now where those sound effects are so integral to the Indiana Jones experience that not having them is just wrong.
Yeah.
Like, I genuinely believe that you can't
Mm.
have anything Indiana Jones related without those sound effects. And the
Yeah.
music as well. That John Williams score, which
Oh
is
yeah.
also is fantastic.
I
I mean,
mean,
ugh,
du-
it
du-
just has
du-
oh,
du- du-
this is what I
du.
mean when I say this is what I mean where I say it's a perfect film. Indiana Jones.
Mm.
Literally everything about it is
Everything about
so
it.
good,
Mm.
apart from the problematic, like, time stuff. But
Mm.
um, yeah, it's a perfect film. But so obviously Indiana Jones is responsible for um their bar being burnt, Marion's bar being burned down.
Yeah. So,
So of course she travels with him to
mm.
Cairo
Yeah, she's like, I'm
to
your
meet Jones's friend Salah.
good old Salah. I love Salah. He's such a good character.
Yes.
He's such a
I
lovable
do, I
guy.
do.
Mm. Like he's such a
I do
lovable.
as well. And
Yeah.
obviously played by John Rhys Davis,
Oh yeah, the great John Rhys Davis.
who who we love, who
Mm.
we love him so much.
Yeah, and who's
Do, do,
Gimli from
do.
Lord of the Rings. Gimli from Lord of the Rings. Um, but yeah, like Solo's just a good character. Really. He's so lovable and kind, and he's just one of those great supporting characters that I'm really happy that they brought him back for Dial of Destiny,
Hmm.
even though he's probably only going to be in it for like not even that long. He's probably not going to have that big a role. I
I,
think.
I've got to ask in the new film. I don't know if I've seen it in the trailers or not. Did they do John Rhys Davis in brownface in that? Because
I'm
that's a big thing that I think a lot of people will find really problematic about Indiana Jones is obviously John Rhys Davis,
yeah,
a Welsh actor,
yeah.
playing a Middle East, well, an Egyptian man, should I say? So yeah, I mean, do you think they did that in the new film? Because that would be interesting if they did.
Um, I've not really, to be honest, I've not really noticed it. But I think that's because like he
Yeah,
hasn't got a lot of screen time in the trailers. Like he's only in like he's shown very
we want to
briefly.
keep the we want to
Yeah,
keep the racist stuff to a minimum.
yeah.
Sorry.
Don't know. I mean, we can yeah. I'm not too sure. I have to watch trailers again to confirm that. But
Oh
um,
yeah, I definitely think it's worth looking at. Yeah.
yeah. But I mean,
My
it,
God, he's
that
79 years old.
he's 79.
Bloody hell.
God damn,
John Rhys Davis, yeah, he's
yeah, he's
79 years old.
79 years old and he's still going. I mean, Harrison Ford's in his 80s now, but and he's still
I was going to
going.
say he must be about like 84 or something like that now.
He's 81, I
Oh, is it?
think.
He's 80.
He
He's 80, 81. Yeah, I think he
mm,
turns 81 soon.
yeah, and he's playing.
Oh,
He's
bloody
playing
heck.
Thunderbolt Ross in the Thunderbolts. In he's
Who?
in this new a new Marvel film like called
Ah, okay, that's why I don't know who it is.
yeah he's yeah
I had no idea who that is.
which is weird because you'd think they wouldn't get an 80-year-old man, but okay.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
I mean,
because
it's Harrison Ford.
yeah, it's Harrison Ford. I mean,
It's Harrison Ford. I mean, he is like a
yeah,
legendary actor at this stage
mm.
in
Oh yeah,
life.
yeah. Basically, yeah. I mean, he is
So,
a legend, living legend.
yeah, 100%.
Mm.
So obviously, Indy learns from Salah that Belloc is assisting the Nazis,
Yeah,
um, who obviously, as we learn, are digging in the wrong place.
yeah.
They're digging in the wrong place, Connor.
They're in the wrong place, so they gotta find the
They're
right
digging in
place.
the wrong place. Yeah.
Yeah,
So obviously, then I think the next major scene that I can think of that happens is that bit where they're running through the market town because they get chased by the those soldiers, don't they?
yeah. Oh, and there's
Where
that.
they try to get the
Yeah.
medallion off of him.
And there's that iconic scene where the guy goes up to Indy with a sword and then he just shoots
Ah, the
him.
sword scene. Yeah.
Yeah, that was Harrison Ford's idea.
That is just. Yeah. Sorry. Go
Yeah,
on.
that was actually Harrison Ford's idea to shoot him because Harrison Ford was really sick that day. I can't remember. I think it was. I don't know if it was food poisoning or just the weather, but he was really ill that day, and he just went to see Steven Spielberg and went, "Look, can I just shoot him? It would make more sense for my character to just shoot him because I think he was
It
originally
would though. It would.
yeah, and it works and it
I
just
agree with him.
works like it's just and it's funny as well.
It's a great scene because it's just a yeah, it's such just a really simple funny joke,
Yeah,
and it feeds into Indiana Jones as a character. Like he's been running around fighting Nazis already for the past like 10 minutes as well.
mm,
Like, I mean, it's kind of interesting that Harrison Ford was sick that day because now thinking about it, in that scene where he shoots him, he does look really just exhausted.
yeah,
And I just thought that was just Harrison Ford playing up, Indy as a character, but maybe he was just seriously ill and was just like, God, I just want to sit down. So he literally just did that scene where he shot him.
yeah,
That's incredible.
yeah. He just
And it
shot.
works. It just
Mm.
works. Like, why wouldn't he shoot him? What's he going to do? Fight him? He's just going to shoot him with
Yeah,
a gun. It's easier.
he was originally
And it's such
supposed
a great
to.
joke, that.
He was supposed to fight him
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
originally, like
I think that is, yeah, I think I seem to remember that, yeah.
yeah, like with a sword, but they changed it because Harrison asked, and everyone was ill. But
Yeah, 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 yeah. That's fair enough.
they get the iconic scene, and you get the scene where he thinks Marion's dead because she hides in the
Yeah, where the
basket.
truck gets blown up, doesn't it?
Mm,
Because he thought he was in the back.
mm. Yeah.
Oh, and then there's that really fucking awesome bit where he's in the bar
Oh yeah,
and
and
like Belloc comes in to like
uh,
just sort of
just
like,
like piss him off. About
to taunt him, yeah,
yeah,
to
taunt him.
taunt him. It's
Yeah,
such a
I love
yeah.
this. I love this line where
And
like,
then
you go first.
sorry, you go on.
Oh,
I'll formulate it. Don't worry about it.
I
I know
love
what I'm going to
I
say,
love
but
the
go on.
line where I love the line after when Belloc's taunting him, and he's like, "Oh, but the Ark, it's like a radio to God," and he's just like, "You want to speak to God? Let's go together. I've got nothing better to
Let's
do."
go together.
And
Yeah,
it
that's
just
so
slowly
fucking cool.
stands
I got
up.
nothing better to do.
Yeah.
I was going to say the bit that I really like in that scene is the bit that leading up to that bit where he talks about the arc, the bit when he's on about the watch,
Mm.
where he says like, this watch I bought it for like, less than $1 at like a local store, but if I bury it in the ground, and then dig it back up 1,000 years later, it becomes priceless.
Mm,
But and he's like, he's sort of saying that ultimately these archaeological finds, most of them anyway, are literally worthless. They're
yeah,
just relics of the past that we've ascribed value to because for whatever our reason is, really, to be honest with you, whether it's because we want to collect them, because we're interested in the historical significance of them. But
yeah,
the ark itself is something that is way beyond that because it literally is a magical object.
mm,
It literally is an object of great power that can change the world forever.
yeah,
And I love, God,
and melt your face off
this
as
film's
well.
so good. Yeah, that's true. Next time,
um,
Dr. Jones, you will need more than children to save your
oh
life.
yeah, that Belloc is such a good villain. He's such a good villain. He's like
Belloq's a good character, yeah.
he's a
I
good
really
character,
like him.
yeah. And then after that, there's the whole thing with the dates where the monkey that they have when following around dies because he eats a date that's poisoned. Um,
Of
yeah,
course, yeah.
and then they decide to go digging in the right place, but they have to sneak into the digging site where the Nazis and Belloc are.
Also, as well, just before we move on to that, I love that obviously there's the guy who deciphers what the medallion says as well, that tells him the warning about the ark as well to set up for later.
Yeah,
Which Indiana Jones kind of dismisses a little bit as like, it's just superstitious nonsense kind of thing like that, because he's not really into that sort of mythical stuff really. He's more of
yeah,
a cold hard facts kind of guy. But
yeah,
then obviously there's the bit where yeah, with like I said, with the dates where the monkey eats the dates and gets poisoned,
mm,
and he throws it up in the air and he's about to catch it in his mouth, but then
yeah.
Salah grabs it. Oh, that's so cool. That's
it's
such cool.
He's just there
The
like,
dates.
yeah, bad dates, and it's like, oh god,
Yeah,
that is
I
such a
love it.
cool
I
line,
love it.
man.
It's so good.
Oh, let's talk
The
about
whole
the
thing is so
yeah.
cool.
I love how like the tone of these films are like rough and they're gritty and but they're also got these elements of comedy in there as well. But it's a good balance. I
Yeah,
feel like.
I think that's what the whole film does really well. Is it's got
Mm,
this sort of gritty adventure sort of like feel to it,
mm,
this sort of globe-trotting adventure. But there's a little bit of sort of neo noir film, like noir filmmaking in there, where
yeah,
there is a little bit of sort of shadows and like like, because obviously it's set during, most noir films are set during World War II anyway. um, and it's
yeah,
got that sort of like darker edge to it. But then there's also like kind of the light-hearted moments that really, yeah, it's just it all works. It all just works together so well, just
mm,
because it was so just really well written,
mm,
and just everything about the film. It's like literally lightning in a bottle.
yeah.
This one in particular. This one in particular.
Mm.
I think that's the case. Yeah.
And then yeah, so they're digging the
Um.
place, and then he finds Marion, and he sort of has to. Well, no, he finds out where to put the staff first, and then he finds Marion
Yes.
afterwards.
And then he goes down into the bit to find out where the actual site of
Yeah.
the ark is
Why did it
by
have to
using
be?
the staff
Yeah. Mm. Well, they have to dig.
and the medallion.
Yeah. Why did it have to be
Just
snakes though?
laser.
Why is it always
I
snakes
don't know,
though?
why did it have to be snakes? Well, before snakes, obviously Indiana Jones finds Marion
Mm.
and
You find out they switched
realizes
baskets.
she's alive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then
But not only that, he also goes to free her, but then realizes that if he frees her,
mm,
it'll look suspicious and they'll come after him. So he just then starts to go to the site anyway to because he needs to get a head start as well on
yeah.
digging down there, because he knows if he doesn't get there straight away, Belloc and the Nazis will get there before him because he doesn't have the same kind of resources and crew.
Mm,
So he leaves
exactly.
her there,
Yeah.
which is such a fucking dickish thing to do.
It
It's
is.
so dickish.
Yeah. Yeah. He's
It's such a dick move, but
yeah.
yeah, that's what Indiana
But
Jones does, man.
but he's Indiana Jones, man. He's Indiana Jones. What you gonna do? What are you gonna do? He's a flawed man. He's a
It's what.
flawed man. And to be fair, during the time
Yeah, but
period,
it's just
yeah. Um,
it's like I said, it's just like it's that sort of moral ambiguity of Indiana Jones where he will sometimes make very selfish decisions if he wants to for his own personal gain, and in this case, that
yeah,
was part of it.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but then they just go to dig for it, don't they? Next,
Mm. They
and they
yeah.
have that really cool shot where it's like silhouetted against the setting sun,
Oh yeah. Then there's
and he
the
changes outfits. Oh, so good.
and then there's the lightning when they finally find it. That's in the background, saying the more darker kind
Oh
of
yeah, of
tone,
course.
which looks fine. I mean, you can tell it's green screened, but looks for the
Yeah,
80s.
but I mean,
It was 80s lightning.
it's a product of its time.
Yeah.
Product of its time.
Oh
Still,
yeah.
you got, yeah, unfortunately,
And
no matter how hard you try, that stuff can't be changed.
I mean, to be fair, but most of but the practical effects in this are just perfection, really. And I feel like because the when I was watching Ant Man: The Wasp: Quantumania, because it's all CGI, and I was just
Hmm.
like, this looks so fucking fake. Like it just looks like a
Yeah,
computer.
yeah.
And I get people will be
That's
like,
the problem, unfortunately.
yeah, people will be like, oh well, it's the quantum
Yeah.
realm. It's not supposed to look. It's not. It's supposed to look different. And I'm like, yeah, but this doesn't look real to me. Like I don't feel like these characters are actually in this realm. I just feel like these are actors standing against a green screen because sometimes it looks like that compared to like practical effects where it looks real. And these movies are a reason why
Mm.
I prefer practical effects to CGI.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
It just
yeah,
makes everything so much more believable
yeah,
because obviously there's physical objects there
yeah.
that the actors can interact with.
Like a good
Like, it just looks realistic.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, like another good example would be the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movies, where you have the ones from the '90s where it was all animatronics from the Jim Henson Company, and they look real.
Hmm.
And then you have the Michael Bay ones where they're like ugly and they don't look real. They look like characters from a PS2 game.
Uh, I think they both look ugly, but that's just because I think TMT only really belongs in animation
Fair enough.
or in comics or games and stuff. I just
Mm.
think because the designs are so inherently ridiculous and cartoony that they just look better in that style. Like the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle films, I'm really looking forward to because
Oh
it's an
yeah, yeah,
animated film.
same. Yeah, it looks
Um,
perfection. Looks
yeah,
like
I'm really
perfect.
looking forward to it. Yeah.
But,
But I think an important thing to mention before we get to the actual reveal of the arc and Salah
mm,
and Indy infiltrating the is it the Well of Souls? I think that's what it's called, something like that.
well, Souls. Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
Something like that. Is the scene where Marion and Belloc
yeah. They had the
have their
dinner.
sort of little they have their little dinner and like obviously he gets her the dress
Mm. Oh
and
yeah,
he's like being a creepy Belgian.
yeah. Being a creepy
And
weirdo.
and then obviously, but I got to say, this is one of the best things about the scene is when they start. Where obviously Marion's goal
Mm.
in that scene is to outdrink Belloc because, as we know from the scene in which we
Yeah,
didn't mention actually in the scene in her bar,
yeah. She
she
outdrinks.
has
She's
a
able, yeah,
reputation.
able to
Yeah,
outdrink
but she has a
people.
reputation of it as well.
Mm.
She's the person you bet on in the drinking contest because she can take it.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, but then obviously she tries to do that to Belloc while also hiding the knife as well so that she can use it as a weapon if necessary.
Mm.
Um, she tries to outdrink Belloc, but obviously Belloc reveals after they've had quite a lot to drink, and she's like, "Oh my god, I can't keep up with him." That his family had a vineyard, so obviously, Belloc literally grew up drinking alcohol, like throughout his entire life. So
Yeah,
he's got pretty strong constitution. So then she tries to resort to start threatening him with a knife, but it doesn't
yeah,
work. Then she tries to leave, and he's like, "Oh well, I've had a good night. Let's go." And he's like, "Oh, okay, see you later." But then obviously the Nazis come and stop him
yeah,
from leaving.
yeah.
Ah, such a great scene. Sets up a lot of
It
great
is a good
character
scene. Yeah,
traits.
it's such a good character traits, and there's a lot of tension and suspense there. For
Ah, such a
Marion's.
good scene that.
Yeah. Um.
Yeah, it's really nice that it's not just Indiana Jones that gets good character moments. It's all the
Yeah.
characters have like
All
a
the
little
characters get
moment
influence.
where yeah, yeah, yeah,
I like how
yeah, exactly.
when the guy gets caught when she gets caught by the same Nazi that was in her bar, the one with the glasses, played by the guy from Porridge, and he just looks and goes, "Hello, my
Ah,
dear.
yes, of course.
Nice to see you again, my dear." And I was
Hello,
like,
my
"Oh
dear.
god, that's such a
Nice to see you
slimy,
again.
that's such a
Nice to see you again, Fraulein.
that's such a
Yeah,
slimy,
such a
just
fucking creepy
yeah,
German dude.
yeah."
And obviously, he has that fucking burn scar on his
Oh
arm from
yeah,
when he touched the medallion.
I
That's
love
so
that I
good.
love that scene. That scene,
Ah!
yeah, that scene just makes me laugh. When he, like he just grabs it and he just screams and he's like, ah, and he just races out.
It's
He's
great,
got to
man.
put his hand in the snow just to cool it down.
It's great.
Yeah, it is great. Yeah,
Yeah, then obviously Indiana Jones goes into a snake infested pit
mm,
to get the ark out. Both him
yeah,
and Salah enter there, and they use the torches to clear a path for them.
yeah,
And they find the ark, get it out, but then obviously who should appear but Belloc,
yeah, and
and with Marion no less.
mm, and then he throws Marion down into the well of souls with
Seals him
Indy.
right in.
Yeah, and seals him in. Um, which again is like a very good. That's a very scary. That is very quite scary and quite frightening
Yeah,
scene as well
it's a
because
good
you.
bit of
Mm,
challenge to put your main characters through as well because
yeah.
obviously you've got the fact that Indiana Jones doesn't like snakes. He
Mm,
like has a phobia of snakes, but he has to overcome his fear to get out of that situation,
yeah.
and then obviously has to use his ingenuity and to find a way out of a sealed tomb, and he does.
Mm,
And Marion helps as well, I
yeah.
think.
Yeah, they work
I don't
together
really remember.
to they do work together, and then that is quite a good thing that, she was able to help them out and seeing them work together and everything. Unlike the next film, Temple of Doom, where Willie just kind of
Oh
yeah,
yes,
we'll get to that.
we'll get to Willie eventually.
We'll get to Willie.
Mrs.
Um,
Spielberg.
yeah, are they still married or did they?
I don't think so
All
actually.
right,
I don't know.
I was gonna say.
Yeah.
um, yeah, and then they manage to get out, and then you have that pretty awesome action sequence during the
Yeah.
airplane,
That
and
fight scene is so cool.
it's so good.
It's
Um,
got so many great moments, and obviously Marion gets stuck in the plane.
and then
Um,
there's the gas or the oil that
yeah,
starts
yeah,
leaking.
uh-huh.
And then the big I love the part where like the big buff dude is like challenging Indy to a fight, and
Oh,
Indy's
so funny. He
and
just
Indy,
beats up the other pilots, and then he's just like, "Ah, a challenge."
and then yeah,
And he's like a fucking pugilist or something. He's a bare
yeah,
knuckle boxer, so obviously, and he's much bigger. I like that as well. I like it when a character has to fight a bigger character,
mm,
and Indiana Jones in this case is not going to win through brute strength. He has to actually fight dirty and use his brain to beat him, which
yeah,
is what he does.
yeah.
And he
But
just that bit with the blades
oh god, yeah.
from the airplane. That's so fucking cool.
He's just like ah, and it just splats blood everywhere.
Or just a bit when he's on the ground and he's like, "Get up! I want to fucking fight you some more." And then he just ducks and turns around and he's like,
Yeah,
"Ah!"
I
So
just
great.
but I just love how like when that guy like start is trying to start the fire of Indy, and Indy just looks at him like, all right, just give me a minute, leave me alone. Yeah,
Hmm.
he's just like, and I just think that's funny. Like Indy's just like, oh for fuck's sake, I gotta fight him as well.
You know what's also a really interesting thing to think about this film actually is there's a lot of back-to-back action scenes.
Mm,
Like, because directly after this is when Indy chases the trucks to get the Ark back,
yeah,
and that's like a whole fucking action scene as well.
yeah,
And like that goes on for quite a while. But
oh
and how
yeah,
long is this film? It's only like 115 minutes, which is not very
yeah.
long.
Well, the
It's like an hour and 40 or something.
that's why I love the action sequences in these films because they're very they go on for very long, but they have I feel like they have layers to them in a weird way.
Yeah, they do.
Like one
And they
thing,
make sense as
yeah,
well. Like Indy
yeah,
has to obviously he gets out of the pyramid and then or not well, yeah, the pyramid I guess. Then he obviously is in a situation where he has to fight his way out of it and
mm,
then was going to use the plane to chase after them, but obviously it blew up.
yeah. So
So then he just found the trucks and then chased after them and yeah,
yeah,
it's great.
and then no, that's the third film where Solo gets the horses.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
I think of the wrong film. But then yeah, then they get the arc. They manage to get the arc back during that big
Mm.
chasing of the trucks, which is really awesome. Really cool. I love the part where Indy has to like literally climb under a truck just to like survive.
Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
the whole scene in general has got great fight scene choreography in it, and just
Mm,
like it's just fun to watch.
yeah.
I
Um,
love it when people have to fight in really like precarious scenarios, like and stuff like that. It's always an interesting way of like how can a character get around this. It's
mm,
also nice when a character has to like actually like Indiana Jones gets hurt in that he gets shot, doesn't he? Like in the
yeah.
arm or something like that,
Yeah,
and
I
he has
guess.
to like deal with that and like yeah, it's just
Mm.
like I like it when characters go through threat.
Yeah,
It's
and
great.
then they get on the boat, and then there's that weird scene where Marion's kissing his owies, I guess.
His little boo boos.
I do
Yeah.
like the part with the mirror though, where she like flings the mirror and he gets
Oh,
hit.
that's funny. That's so funny. I still think Marion and Indy in this particular moment, them two being a romantic couple, is a bit weird. But
Mm,
also yeah, Indiana Jones needed a love interest because
mm.
that's par for the course with these
Yeah,
types of films.
yeah,
Um,
and then he gets a new one in almost each movie, except
oh
for
yeah, because
yeah,
that's typical sort of like serial, like adventure serial fashion is like each week there's a new girl.
mm,
This is famous actress Victoria, something black. I
yeah,
don't know.
yeah,
Like that's the way they worked in the older ones. But
mm,
considering the history of the characters in this, it does seem a
yeah.
bit weird because it does imply that Indy is like what, like 10 years older probably than Marion,
I think so. Yeah,
maybe
yeah,
something like that,
I think so. Yeah. Probably
something
10 years
like that.
older.
Yeah,
'Cause I think he's in his 30s, isn't he? Or like at least
something
mid
like that. Yeah,
30s.
he's definitely in his late 20s, early 30s. I would say at this,
Yeah.
and by the time of Raiders.
Which I like though. I like how he's a much older man. Like it's not like
Well, yeah, he's
how
a bit
like
more experienced, isn't he?
it's not like how like most films, particularly nowadays, would probably like with the new Uncharted movie where they got Tom Holland to play Nathan Drake, even though Nathan Drake's supposed
Yeah,
to be
that was
like
weird.
in his like 30s and Tom Holland was in his like mid 20s when they did that. Um,
I think that's fine if you're doing it as like an origin story, but like,
yeah, but
don't be surprised. Don't be surprised if,
mm,
like, when you do need to make a proper Uncharted film, that the fans don't like it because,
it's
you know,
well,
it's not a representation of the game and games as well, which have very, very like, cinematic
mm,
stories already, because they're just going to play the game then otherwise, aren't they?
yeah. I was like I remember like that film came out last year. I thought it came out in 2021, but it actually came out
No,
last year. I was like, what the fuck?
I've never watched it, and I don't really have any interest to watch it. I
uh,
mean, I like Uncharted fine enough as a game, but I just don't really care about the film. It's like whatever.
I watched.
Globetrotting
Mm,
these types of adventure films now
yeah.
that come out nowadays are nothing like the ones that you know
Mm,
from like the 80s and before. There's just they just don't have the same charm that
yeah.
they used to.
I say the closest, most recent one would probably have to be the Tintin movie that got made.
Yeah, the Tintin movie was really good,
Yeah,
and even
but
then, that was like over 10 years ago now.
yeah, they never did a
You know,
sequel to that, which sucks because we wanted a
oh,
second
the
and third.
Mummies are really good. The Mummy 1 and 2, the first two
Mm.
Mummy films,
Oh
are
yeah,
also really good adventure films
mm.
as
But
well.
until Tom Cruise came in and ruined it with his reboot.
That wasn't his fault. And they were not going for an adventure film then, they were going for
Yeah,
a
a
big
horror movie.
Hollywood.
Yeah,
No, 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 they weren't going for a horror film, absolutely not. They were
no.
going for a big blockbuster superhero type film
Yeah, cinematic
because
universe, the
yeah,
dark
because that was
universe.
the goal, wasn't it? Was to
Yeah,
make it a cinematic universe with all like the classic, the dark universe characters, which are all just basically based off of all Victorian novels, so they
yeah.
don't have to pay any royalties to anyone.
I mean, yeah, they did that. They did that before back in because that was like the earliest ones where they would cross over. But it's just one of those things where it's like you didn't have to really do it like Marvel, and I don't like this. I don't like cinematic
No,
universes anyway. So
I
anymore.
think I
So,
think it works for Marvel only because obviously there's so much variety in Marvel, and there's so many like different universes, and like comic
mm,
books in general are just insane with what they do. So I think it works for Marvel, but I think nothing else can really do it to the same level because it just doesn't work.
mm. Uh,
Um, yeah, so back to Indiana Jones. Sorry. So
yeah,
obviously the Germans in a U-boat,
mm,
um, obviously take over the ship and steal the Ark and take Marion with them as well because Belloc
yeah,
is, a massive simp. He just
yeah,
can't accept the fact that she's not interested in him,
yeah,
and is
yeah.
more into the Chad Indiana Jones, which is
Mm.
understandable.
Uh,
And yeah,
Yeah, and then well, I like the scene. Yeah, the scene on the ship is pretty. It's pretty wild and pretty suspenseful because you kind of get what's going to happen, but when it does happen, you're like, oh shit, they caught up with them. Like
yeah.
I like how they just don't give up the Nats, the like Balak and the Nazis. They're just there like, no, we're gonna keep going. We're gonna get this.
Well, you got to remember that they report directly to Hitler, and I imagine Hitler was the kind of guy that did not like failure.
Yeah.
So I can understand the motivation behind some of the German soldiers.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah. Uh, but I do like that. Yeah, that scene is it's pretty wild, and I really like the fact that Indiana Jones sneaks onto the submarine. But
yeah, yeah, yeah.
you never actually see him like sneak into the submarine because obviously he's on top of it and then goes underwater.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it logistically, it doesn't make any sense, but who
Yeah,
cares?
yeah. He's just holding on the entire. He was holding his breath. I'm going to assume he managed to get inside at one point
He
before.
probably did,
Yeah.
yeah. He managed to sneak his way
Mm.
in, who
I
cares?
do.
And then,
I like how all
oh,
the
sorry.
That's all right. I like how all the staff, like of the other people on the boat that they're on, start cheering when they see him on the
Yeah, I mean that's such like a fan, like not a fan moment, like an audience surrogate moment where you're
yeah,
like, yeah, woo, we
yes,
love Indiana Jones,
oh
but who
indeed.
cares? Who cares? Whatever.
Um,
It's great.
yeah, I love the scene where like he gets caught while he's trying to like get into Nazi uniform,
Oh yeah, that's so funny.
and then
When
like
that dude, when that dude's
yeah,
very clearly like, "Oh, look at your uniform, look at the status in," and then he's like, "Well, yeah, of course, like that sort of thing," and then he just knocks him out.
and he's just like fuck this.
Well, that's sort of the point of that joke is that he knocks out a guy who obviously has got a uniform that's too small for Indiana Jones.
Mm,
Then an officer comes up to him
yeah,
and starts, saying, put your uniform together. What are you doing? And then obviously he knocks
yeah,
him out, and his uniform's the right size.
yeah.
It's just a nice
It's
little
just
joke, nice little scene.
it's a good joke. It's a good joke.
Yeah.
And then there's the scene where they're taking the ark to the place where it needs to be taken
Yes.
to,
Well,
and
they're doing it to sort of test it before they send it to Hitler. That's sort of
yeah,
the idea of it.
mm,
And then obviously Indiana Jones is like, like, fuck this, I'm going to blow it up with a rocket launcher, which
mm.
is pretty
With a
cool.
fucking bazooka. Let's go.
But then this is what I mean when I say that Belloc and India contrast each other because obviously Belloc
Mm,
convinces Indy to not do it
yeah,
because
because
You know,
for yeah, for the
he's
sake of
like, "Ah, you want to see, don't you want to see it as much as I do if it's really
yeah,
true."
yeah, yeah, exactly.
And obviously, yeah,
And he's trying to like talk. He's trying to like you know be like, oh, you need to yeah. He's trying to get under in like Indy just wants Marion back, but Balak's trying to get under his skin and be like, oh, what you're an archaeologist. You know, don't you
hmm
want to find out and sort of get into
yeah, exactly,
yeah.
yeah,
And I do like that, and it's sort of Indy kind of he can't resist it. He has to kind of know, even even though even though like they're gonna get tied up, like he needs
mm,
it's that kind of great mystery where if you were given like the choice of finding something out that nobody else knew about and something else, you probably would pick the first option where it's like I need to know I
yeah.
need to uncover this secret
Oh,
because
for sure,
who
yeah.
else is gonna know?
Well, exactly, but not only that, just Indiana Jones in general is just like, yeah, he's insane. He's got that insatiable curiosity of like history and culture. So of
Mm.
course, Belloc completely plays him in this,
Oh yeah.
like 100%. And this is kind of the whole thing I say why their rivalry is really interesting. But then obviously, as we
Yeah.
see later on, with Marion and Indy have been tied up
Mm,
as they perform the ritual, and obviously they open the ark and it's full of sand. But then obviously
mm.
shit hits the fan, and
Yeah.
spirits, flames, and bolts of lightning, and like a bunch of other cool shit comes out of it and just kills
Mm.
everyone.
Yeah.
Apart from Indy and Marion, who don't look at it because
Yeah,
they
so you have this
understand that to gaze upon such things is to go mad.
and I like how he kind of in order for him to survive, he has to give up looking like his idea was, "I want to find out what it is. I need to know." And then because when he realizes
Yeah.
that actually
So when
this is
Indy, yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Indy
So
learns a lesson there where it's
yeah,
like, there are some things which man are not meant to know,
yeah,
and
exactly. So
curiosity killed the cat, as you say.
yeah, yeah,
It's the
and it's
power of
like
the Indiana Jones.
yeah, so he has to like give up knowing for,
100%,
stay
yeah.
alive.
What's inside of it, yeah.
Yeah.
And it kills all the Nazis in
Yeah.
one of the coolest scenes ever,
Oh
where
god.
obviously
Which death you say is the best one?
it's so hard. I like them all.
'Cause
I like them all. I like the guy whose face sort of like, sort of like he goes into his face sort of shrinks and goes in on itself.
oh yeah,
His eyes
that's
go on the back
creepy.
of the head, and the guy's face melts obviously, and
Oh
then
yeah.
Belloc explodes. His head just explodes, and it's so cool.
Belloq's hit. I love how like Belloq's head is just
Oh, it's so
explodes.
fucking good. What
Yeah.
I love about this film is there's just like this moments where it's just like, violence, and it's really, and it
Mm.
feels shocking when it happens because the film
Yeah.
is relatively tame in terms of
Mm.
what violence it shows. But I mean, I watched this when I was a kid, and I wasn't really phased by it. Apart from that guy's
Mm.
face melted,
Oh yeah,
then I was like, whoa!
I
It's
feel
like,
like
whoa!
there were definitely some scenes that definitely freaked me out as a kid, but quite liked them though.
Oh
I
yeah,
was
yeah.
like,
It's a
oh
little bit scary,
yeah,
Indiana Jones, but that's fine. I think it's so. I
mm,
think kids in general enjoy watching scary stuff. I
yeah.
know I did as a kid. You
It's
love
you
being
like,
scared a little bit
yeah,
because you're like,
you like to
ooh.
be scared, like you like to
And also, it makes you
yeah,
feel like as if you're watching something shouldn't be watching, which
yeah,
of course
exactly,
all kids love to do.
yeah.
Yeah,
And then the ark is being gets taken back to the museum and
it
it's
is
being guarded by top
top
men,
top men.
top
And
men.
obviously, Indiana Jones shows that he hates bureaucracy, so he is a libertarian.
Mm,
Um, but
yeah,
obviously, but obviously, that kind of ends the whole thing. Indiana Jones story where he doesn't really get anything out of it, but he learns a valuable lesson that there are more important things in
mm,
archaeological artifacts than money, and
yeah,
he gets Marion back
yeah, and
for because he saved her,
yeah, and
and
that kind
yeah.
of get starts the ball rolling where because in all the movies he doesn't actually keep any of the artifacts that he gets.
No.
He always has
I
to
mean,
give them up.
that's sort of the whole point of
Mm,
Indiana Jones as a character is he is on the surface he's very much like Harrison Ford's other character Han Solo in a way.
yeah,
He is a roguish character who is relatively speaking in it for himself. He
mm,
has some kind of extrinsic thing that he wants, and he wants to get that by any means necessary because it will mean for him something like either some kind of glory from like the historical significance of an artifact or even just like monetary value.
mm,
But throughout the films he then learns like his heart of gold shows through where he goes, oh, this thing is like in Temple of Doom's a perfect example, which I'll get onto later. But the
yeah,
ending of that film shows that he's like, he understands when not to, when it's like leave well enough alone and
yeah.
don't pursue it any further. Just take the loss as
Take
it
the
were.
loss. yeah.
and just move on to the next thing because he's an adventurer anyway. He goes on
Mm.
adventures all the time,
Oh yeah,
so it doesn't
exactly.
matter.
And then yeah, he gets taken to
Yeah,
the unit that we see again in Crystal Skull, which I quite liked in Crystal Skull. I liked how they called
I
back to
liked it,
that.
but it held no significance
Mm,
to the story as a whole. It's just like, oh, do you remember that thing from the first film? And it's like, yeah, of course
mm,
I did. I
yeah,
knew it was in that warehouse because that's just the location that they're in, which is
yeah.
fine. I don't mind that. It's just I didn't need to see the arc to know where it was.
Oh yeah, they show the
I
arc,
just
don't
knew
they?
that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
but I mean, if it held more, if it was like, oh, maybe the aliens created the arc or something, I don't know.
mm, I don't know. We'll get
Either
to
way, the
that.
point is, the interest, the point. Actually, I'll make that point later on after we've covered the first three films,
Yeah.
and then because it will segue into the fourth one. But
Mm,
that is basically the end of the first film,
yeah.
and
And
what a masterpiece, eh?
it's a masterpiece. It's a classic, and
Love it.
and it's just one of the best action, greatest action movies ever made.
I
And
would really like to
yeah,
see more of these kinds of adventure films.
yeah. I want to see
Set
these
them
come
whatever
back.
time period you want to set them in.
Mm,
Just I love these types of films. This is my bread and
yeah.
butter. I like films about people going on adventures,
Mm,
and not just films. I like stories in general about that. Like
yeah.
that's why I like Star Wars as well. The first three in particular, because well, the first two should I say, because it feels like characters are going on an adventure.
Yeah.
I like that kind of thing. It's like we're off to explore and do great things. I love that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
I hope somebody decides. You know what? Let's create a brand new character and let's. I
I,
hope
I think
the
it I think it's
yeah.
possible, but the problem is just what studio will do it. What
Mm,
studio will allow them to just sort of like give them the chance to make their own film? Because the problem is now
yeah.
these types of films like Indiana Jonesy and these types of like adventure serials all require vast amounts of money.
Mm,
Like even more recent examples of it, they've been very big budgets, even if they've
yeah.
not been very successful. So I think they're wary about it.
Yeah.
That might change in the future. We
Mm,
never really know with Hollywood
yeah.
because there
Well,
it's dipping.
Hollywood's starting to get a bit of a budget problem at the moment. I
Mm.
mean, a lot of good movies,
An over budget problem, yeah,
yeah, like because
100%.
that's one of the reasons why the new Fast and Furious movie is bombing because they've spent too much money on it,
Yeah, well,
and
and
the
also
Flash
there's
is
no
yeah the new yeah
but the problem with those budgets is kind of a few things. One, it's the marketing that they put into it is so extensive that it costs vast amounts of money.
mm,
It's the amount of money they spend on CGI effects, which I mean, I'm not going to blame any of the animators on those because I think they've got a raw deal as it is. I mean, they get really horribly mistreated by a lot of
oh
these
yeah
big
yeah
studios, the CGI
oh yeah
animators.
like
They're
mm,
they're set into like horrible work conditions where they just, yeah,
yeah
it's just abysmal what they have to go through.
mm,
But the money also then goes to the talent as well, which collect these
yeah
massive paychecks that it's like, yeah, I mean, it's really nice that the actors get paid. I mean, they work hard, but
yeah
so does everybody else on the film. So why are they not getting an equal cut? Or at
mm,
least that's why, for instance, Keanu Reeves is one of my favorite actors because he tries to share.
yeah
He doesn't rely on that massive income. He makes like how much money he probably makes from the John Wick films
mm,
is like a lot, and he's like a lot of people have said that he gives that money to other people, which is really
yeah
nice. I wish more actors were keen to do that, but they're
mm.
not, unfortunately.
No, they're just not.
No, but I mean,
But
it's the culture. It's the culture of
yeah,
Hollywood. It's a culture that is based around extravagancy and what's the right word? Exploitation as well.
mm,
But
yeah,
anyway,
exactly.
enough about
But
all that
yeah,
depressing real world
yeah,
stuff.
well,
I want to go on a fantastical adventure
yeah,
to India.
yeah. So let's segue over to Indiana Jones and the Temple
Oh.
of Doom.
Now, I have a question for you, Connor, because I know
Yeah,
that this film is kind of the black sheep of the original three films.
yeah.
There are a lot of people who don't like Temple of Doom. What
Mm.
is your opinion on it?
So when I first saw it back in the day, I first saw these when I was about, I want to say, when did Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was
Kingdom of the
two.
Crystal Skull probably came out like 2008.
Yeah, so I first watched these in 2007, so I must have been about
Oh, really? Wow.
yeah, because I knew of Indiana Jones, I just never seen them. So when the fourth one got announced, my mum brought them on DVD, and so
Oh, cool.
we binged through all of them. And I remember like not really liking Temple of Doom back in the day. So it was always the one when I would rewatch trilogy. It was always the one I would usually skip. And then last night before we recorded this, I was like, you know what, I should probably because I knew what my opinion was on the other movies, but
Hmm. But
I
that was the
thought
one you needed to revisit the
yeah,
most,
like
yeah.
because I was like, I should probably revisit Temple of Doom. And honestly, apart from Willie, I really quite like Temple of Doom.
Hmm.
I think that
Yeah.
it's quite unique. I like how dark it is. Um, I like how different it is. There are some things about it, like some of the comedy doesn't particularly work for me. Again, most of the stuff with Willie.
Yeah.
But overall, I do think it's got a B horror movie kind of element to it, which I quite enjoy.
Mm.
And yeah, I just think it's a and Short Round. I mean, who doesn't love Short Round? I mean, he won an Oscar last year. No, this year.
He won it this year, yeah,
Yeah,
for
he won
Everything Everywhere All at Once. Which, if
yeah,
nobody listening to this has never watched that film, watch it
yeah,
immediately.
but yeah,
Stop listening to this podcast and go watch it now.
yeah. Just go watch
You
every.
are doing yourself a
Yeah,
disservice by not watching it.
it's
One of
such a
the
good
best
movie.
films that has come out in like the last 10 years,
It's such a good
easily,
film. Such a good film.
easily,
Um, yeah, everything over all at once. Go watch that, please, because it's a good movie. But
fantastic.
this movie, yeah, I do like Temple of Doom.
Hmm.
I don't think it's like I said before. I can see why people think it's the black sheep.
Mm, mm, mhm.
That's my that's
Yeah,
my
cool.
apple.
I mean, good. I mean,
Yeah,
so I'll sort of go into my history of Indiana Jones as
yeah,
well, since you did. So I've watched these films as long as I can remember, pretty much. I
mm,
even remember before I owned anything officially, like the official like Blu-rays or whatever, the DVDs of Indiana Jones. I had all three films on taped off the television on a VHS, on
yeah,
like three VHSs, back when I was a kid, and I would watch them repeatedly because yeah, I love Indiana Jones so much. Temple of Doom, though, is a film that I still really enjoy this film a lot. I don't think it's as bad as people think it is.
mm,
I think people just don't like this film because of Willie, which is
ye-
understandable. She is
yeah.
very annoying.
So
Um,
it's weird because
yeah,
when I watched the film yesterday, I was watching it and at first I was like, oh, I'm actually quite enjoying Willie. I think like, I don't, why do people not?
I like the
I've,
idea of the
yeah,
character. I just think the problem with
yeah,
Willie is that she does nothing. She has
yeah,
no prevalence to the plot whatsoever. None of the
yeah,
skills she like. You know what? She think about it. She's like a dancer or like an
mm,
entertainer of some kind. None of
yeah,
those skills come into effect. Like it would have been like the bit I was thinking of is the bit when Indy gets is put under the influence of the cult
yeah,
through like hypnotized. It
you
would
get
it would have been
hypnotized, yeah,
interesting if she with Short Round went through a thing where it's like we've got to save Indiana Jones, so she used those sort of entertainment skills. Like maybe she infiltrated as like a dancer, and I was
yeah,
like, oh, and they're all like, oh yes, maybe they're up in the palace, because they've taken it over, which you don't really see as well because they've brainwashed the prince, but they don't use the palace above it at all. It would have been interesting if they moved up into there and like maybe she comes into the dance and then Short
mhm,
Round sneaks around to try and save Indy. Like
yeah,
there's things they could have done to make that character at least do something, but she
yeah.
doesn't, unfortunately, and
She
it is really
she is
infuriating.
she is quite because when I was watching the film yesterday, for the first few minutes, for the first kind of like 30 minutes, I think
Uh.
I was quite enjoying it. I was like, oh yeah, she's quite funny.
Yeah,
What? Yeah,
I do. Will
it's
say the
it's
first.
when
Oh, sorry, go on.
it's when they get to the part with the elephants where they're riding the elephants. That's
Yeah,
when
that's
they're
when
in
she
the
starts
when
getting
she. I
irritating.
was
Yeah,
like, okay, you're getting annoying now. Please shut up.
I did like the bit when she had to go into the bug tunnel, and
I didn't like that. I actually didn't like that bit just because she was so like like oh I broke a nail and I'm like there's a kid and a grown man who are gonna die if you
yeah,
don't do this and it's just a
I
bit
think yeah,
yeah
I think that's kind of the point though. That's sort of the joke of
yeah
the scene is that Willie
mm,
is literally watching two people die, and she's like, "Oh, I just don't want to touch the bugs," kind of thing like that.
yeah but
And it is a little bit
it's
sexist.
it's
I
kind
mean,
of
it's completely
it's
sexist
it
actually, but
yeah
yeah,
it's just very irritating to watch and it's just like am I supposed to be
yeah.
am I supposed to laugh at this or am I supposed to be
I think
like
you're
yeah
supposed to have a bit of both, sort of like, oh, the comedy of her not being able to touch the
mm,
bugs is so funny because women
yeah
don't like bugs, kind of thing like that. But then also the threat of like Indiana Jones dying, and yeah, it's
yeah
not the best scene in the world. But
mm,
so to kind of finish off my history with it, this is a
yeah
film where I have a lot of I used to love as a kid, but as the years getting older, I have seen the flaws of this film, and I can understand why a lot of
yeah
people don't like it because it
mm.
is not the best out of the three, without a
Oh
shadow of a
god no
doubt
mm.
without a shadow of a doubt. But I suppose just to kind of say the one scene that I do really enjoy, I love the cold opening again, where
Yeah,
they're in China,
where they're in China, and
Shanghai, in fact. Sorry, I
what's
believe specifically.
what's funny in that opening scene is that obviously Willie comes in and she's dancing, but what's funny is that she actually covers up half the title because the title like fades in, but because
Yes.
she stands in front of it, so like you can't actually read half of it. So it's like
Mm.
in Anna Jones and the of
Come
Doom.
on. You know what the film was after the first one. You didn't need reminding that this was an Indiana Jones film. You
Yeah,
just didn't. Let's be frank.
yeah, because
Um,
this was the film that where they started actually putting Indiana Jones's name in the titles because Raiders of the Lost Ark, his name was
yeah, it was
never
just Raiders of the
it
Lost
was just
Ark
Raiders
here
of the
when it
Lost Ark.
originally released. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like if they ever do reboot it, they should probably do that again. Just Don't put
Yeah,
yourself in
because
it.
I do like one of my favorite things in films is when they have like films that are like these are individual stories. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? It's about the same character and maybe some
Mm,
themes carry over between them, but that each film is about a different thing going on around them at the moment.
mm,
Like they have character development and stuff, but ultimately the world around them is doing things
mm.
out of their control. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Because that's what it's like in real life. I don't like films where everything revolves around the protagonist consistently and like they're just constantly moving from place to place where things happen to them
Yeah.
where things happen to them because they've arrived there. I should say more specifically.
Mm,
um but I think to just kind of continue on from the beginning, I really like the
yeah.
musical opening.
Mm,
I mean, I really like those kind of like old fashioned like musical like
yeah.
sort of visuals. I thought it was a nice little sort of different take on the intro.
Mm,
Then
I
obviously
s
you've got James
yeah.
Bond, James Bond. You've got Harrison Ford looking like James Bond.
Mm,
Sorry, I should
yeah.
say.
Which is
Obviously
weird.
conducting a deal.
Yeah. Which is weird because George Lucas and Steven Spielberg, well, I think George Lucas was like, "Oh, I don't wanna I wanna create a character different from James Bond," but yet he acts a lot like him in this in the opening,
Well,
doesn't he?
yeah, I mean, that's
Yeah.
fine. I think it's sort of a
Mm.
little homage, really, more than anything,
Yeah.
and it's just a nice little. It starts off the being the typical sort of like, we're both suave
Yeah.
gentlemen here,
Mm.
but you've been
It
poisoned, Mister Jones. What will you do? And then he just sort of like punches a guy, and then it just devolves
yeah.
into chaos,
Oh,
which I
yeah.
think is much more, which is not something you'd see in a James Bond film.
Mm.
James Bond would have already like come up with a plan to like, he's like, ah, yes,
Yeah.
but you weren't expecting my gun,
Mm.
and like,
Yeah,
yeah, I
exactly.
love that scene a lot. It's funny, and then obviously they get the diamonds
Yeah.
and they
Wait,
jump out of the
does
building.
does
The
she
Obi
actually
Wan. It's called the
yeah.
Obi Wan. That club that they're in.
The
I don't know
Obi-Wan.
if you
Oh,
know that.
yeah, it is. I
It's
noticed
called
that
the Obi Wan.
yesterday.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
Nice
thought
little reference
I
there.
was like, "Oh, that was quite funny." Um, yeah, does he actually get the diamond? 'Cause I was watching yesterday. I don't think they
No, we don't think he does actually, does he? I think they
yeah.
try to get the diamonds, but then, well, Willie tries to get the diamonds mainly. She doesn't
Mm,
even get the antidote half the time. It's like, dude, Indiana
yeah.
Jones is going to die. Save him, man.
Yeah. It's like,
I
"This
do
guy's
think
gonna die, and you care about more about diamonds. What the
the
fuck?"
the only thing that's really weird about this film in general is that Willie just sort of agrees to go with them.
Mm,
Like they just get on a plane together, and then she's like, "Oh yeah, I'll leave this country and go somewhere else."
mm. Yeah. I like and
It's so weird.
there's definitely a weird kind of relationship with her and Indy because they sort of
Yeah,
they
I
like each
think
other, but they hate each other, and it's one of those
yeah,
love-hate
it's
kind of
it's a
things.
very it's a very typical sort of like very old school romance story from like early cinema. That a lot of the
Yeah.
stuff in this film I feel like is kind of satirizing the kind of really old fashioned like adventure serials from like the 1930s where
Yeah.
they had um like the main example I can think of is the bit when they're eating with the Indian the Indian prince,
Mm.
like the prince and stuff in the palace, and obviously
Yeah.
they're all eating like, oh, they're eating snakes, and like the intention of that scene was to sort of ridicule the sort of like um the old sort of views that people had about those sort of old cultures
Mm.
where there's like, oh, they eat weird things that we don't understand, and it's like producing to such a ridiculous extreme that obviously by today's standards it does kind of seem incredibly racist.
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
Also a
Pretty
lot of
much.
people in brownface again because
Yeah.
that's just
Th
what you did back then.
that's
Great.
what you did back in, like, the '80s and '90s, really, didn't you?
Yeah, and not even just that before then. It's been a
Oh,
thing in
yeah. Well,
cinema.
oh, yeah,
It
yeah,
has a
that's
massive history, but the problem is
mm.
where obviously black and brown face comes from minstrel shows, which were insanely racist,
Yeah.
and the history of where that kind of practice comes from is
Mm.
something that is not acceptable in modern day standards for a very
Yeah.
obvious reason because of the history around it. But
Yeah.
obviously back then they weren't too concerned with the history of black people,
Mm.
so
No, of
it's kind
course.
of understandable.
Of course they weren't.
Um, but anyway, yeah. So obviously
Yeah.
they escape the club.
Mm.
They get on the plane, which obviously is owned by Lao
By the
She.
guy. Yeah.
Yeah, Lao She, I think his name is something like
Lao
that.
She. Yeah, I think it is
Yeah,
Lao She, yeah.
and then obviously they fly away,
And
going
then
somewhere, and then obviously the two pilots just jump out with the
they just jump out
parachutes.
the plane and they're like, "Bye-bye. See you later."
I do really love the bit when the plane has obviously been, they dump the fuel and like, the plane's getting ready to, sort of fall
Yeah.
out, and then Willie just goes like, "Do you know how to fly a plane?" And then he just goes, "No, do you?" Like
Yeah.
genuinely asking her. I love that.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
But how do you feel about this one being set before Raiders? Because this is a prequel, technically.
Yeah, I think that's fine. It's only
Mm.
like a year difference, isn't it, or
Yeah.
something like that? It's like 1935. It's
Mm.
fine.
Yeah.
Indiana Jones has been going on adventures probably since he was a child, if Last Crusade is to be believed.
Oh yeah, and then obviously there's the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, the TV
Of
show.
course, the
Yeah,
classic TV series that everyone
yeah.
definitely watched.
They were going to bring. There was a rumor they were going to. There was a rumor they were going to bring it back for Disney Plus, like revive it, but I think that got canned.
Just make like a
Yeah,
new adventure character, it's fine.
yeah. Just make a new character.
Just make more Tintin. I'll make more Tintin.
Come
Tintin's
on,
good.
come on, Spielberg, make another Tintin.
Come on, Tintin. Come
Yeah,
on, Spielberg.
you can do it,
Um,
Spielberg.
yeah, obviously. Oh, we haven't talked about Short Round yet. Short Round's
Oh no,
also in it.
short. I love Short Round. Like I love the relationship he has with Indy. It's almost a bit like a friendship, but like a bit like a not. I wouldn't say father and son. It's more uncle and nephew kind of.
Yeah, or
Yeah,
like big brother, little brother kind of thing.
yeah,
I think that's kind of what I think is the major problem with this film is that they had tried to fit in Short Round and Willie, and I think definitely sometimes both of them can be a little great, and Willie definitely more than Short Round.
yeah, oh, yeah,
Um, but I think it would have been more interesting if either Willie wasn't as annoying at the very least, or
yeah.
if the crux of the relationship was between Indiana Jones and Short Round, maybe without even bothering with Willie.
Mm,
Just something a little different. But
yeah,
eh, we all know the reason why Willie's in the film, so it's
yeah.
fine.
Yeah, exactly. We all know the reason why Willie's in the film. There's then well they get to the village and then they get offered food and then Willie refuses to eat it and he's just like you're insulting them, you're embarrassing me, eat it.
And
Mm,
is like, they've offered you food, you got to eat it.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
because it's like this is more food than they eat in a week.
That's kind of one of the things I do kind of somewhat like about Indiana Jones is that he's very culturally sensitive.
Yeah,
He doesn't like he's an adventurer, and yeah, he's technically like a colonialist to a certain
mm,
extent, but he's more kind of sort of respectful of the cultures that he's involved with, and he doesn't steal things or like
yeah,
he probably does. We don't see it on screen anyway, but still,
mm,
the point I'm making is that he is a little bit more he's a little bit more understanding of cultures and doesn't just try to come in and act like a white savior or anything. Well, he does a little
yeah,
bit actually. That's a lie, but
mm,
you know what I mean. You get what I'm saying.
yeah,
He's a little bit
exactly,
better
yeah,
than all the serialized adventure characters who were literally just like, it's a good thing I was here to protect you savages.
mm, yeah, definitely.
um, oh yeah, we should also talk about how they get off the plane, which is by
Oh yeah, the when they get the inflatable
inflatable
boat.
raft,
Didn't they?
and that's fucking ridiculous.
Wasn't there a show that like I think there was a show that proved that you could actually survive that? I can't remember which name it was, but I swear down
Is
there
it
was.
MythBusters?
I think it was MythBusters.
Let's have a look. I'll see if I can find it.
Because I remember that I remember reading somewhere like there was one show where because obviously I think it was after it might have been after Crystal Skull came out with the fridge, and I think people were kind of like, well, you wouldn't survive falling from a plane into a inflatable boat, and then I think someone proved that actually technically you could it's possible.
I won't believe that until somebody
Yeah,
actually tries it.
yeah.
I mean,
I don't think anyone's going to try it though.
no, of course not. That's one of those things where it's like, oh, technically, if we look at science, and it's like, yeah, well, then just make the guy do it,
Mm,
and then just do it. The problem with it is that the thing that makes it unbelievable. I mean, the thing that makes it believable slash unbelievable is it relies on the person who's controlling the raft to
yeah,
do a smooth landing.
yeah,
Like it's possible. I mean, if it is to be believed that it is possible, but it's still ridiculous. But who cares? Like they
mm,
needed to get out of the plane somehow, and
yeah.
and then they raft down a river,
I love
and they end
yeah
up at
yeah
a village.
yeah the rough down of the rough they get off they land on the they land on well they land and then they go down the hill and they land in a river and it's like it's just
I think
like
what's more
how did this
unbelievable.
here.
I think what's more unbelievable about it really is the
Mm.
fact that the mountain that they slide down is meant to be the Himalayas, and
Oh
it's like,
right.
oh, the Himalayas are massive.
Yeah
Like
they are.
the friction for I just say yeah, but it doesn't really matter, does it? Who cares?
It's all fantasy at the end of the day really.
Yeah,
Like Indiana Jones has never really been people like
yeah, it's not realistic.
I think people like to think it's grounded in reality for some reason but I feel like not really
Well,
because
people do that with
yeah
action characters in general. They look at
yeah
action heroes doing action hero things and they go, "Wow, I can do that." And it's like, "No, you can't, bud.
no, no,
No,
you
you
really
can't, bud."
can't. You
John
really
Wick
can't.
is like so unrealistic.
Oh yeah,
Like
like
in terms of like what happens to him, it's like, nah, he'd be dead
mm,
like ages ago.
yeah,
He literally stands in place and guys try to shoot him and they just miss. It's really
mm,
it's incredible.
yeah.
um,
God,
but anyway, yeah. So they end up at the village, which obviously is in need of someone to get them. Back their sacred stones. There are
and
5
yeah, this the
stones.
Sacred Stone and their children as well, because they've all been captured
Yeah,
and
they've been captured and taken to Pankot Palace
mm,
by an evil cult.
yeah, and then they get on the elephants, and this is when Willie starts to get really fucking annoying, like
Yeah.
especially when she's like, "Oh, you need to have a bath," to the elephant, and it's like, don't be mean to the don't be mean to the elephant.
Bath. Yeah,
Yeah,
but she's meant to be that sort of like,
yeah,
out of touch sort of person who's never been in who's been a city person their entire life and doesn't understand other cultures and other societies outside of like the little world she's been in, kind of
yeah,
thing. That's sort of the I get what they're going for really with Willie, but it's just, by today's standard, it's just very old fashioned.
yeah,
But so yeah, so they make their way up to the palace, to Pankot Palace, I think it's called.
yeah. Bangkok,
Pankot
yeah.
Pankot Pankot or something like that.
Yeah, they make way to the palace, and then they find out there's
Mm,
people living there, and
yeah.
you get introduced to the British Army are there for some reason. I can't remember the
Well,
reason
that's
why.
because
Yeah.
Britain has like a long history with being involved in India
Oh
as a
right.
whole.
Mm.
Obviously, it's about once again it's about colonialization.
Oh yeah.
So the British went over to India like ages ago to to colonize it, and that's where a lot of things like spices and like from that part of the world have ended up over in Britain is because of that colonialization. So
Mm.
it's kind of a little bit it's kind of understandable why the British are there because they had such large majority control over India for a long period of time.
Yeah.
Even going into the Second World War, um, they still had a lot of control in India, and they would have been stationed at places like that to just sort of like the local royals would have used them as like guards and stuff like that, or like
Mm.
well, to a certain extent, like officials would have
Yeah.
used them, but you know. Yeah, that's kind of really it. Really,
Mm.
that's why the British Army's there because of our
Yeah.
history.
Definitely. Yeah. Um. Well, yeah, they get there, and then that's when we have the dinner scene where they have all the different uh snakes and bugs and monkey brains,
Yeah,
which is
as I said, this was intended. I think they've said it before that it was intending to be a satirical view of like those kind of old like sort of old cultures. These cultures we don't understand. They look like this, and that's a
mm,
current sort of a theme throughout the film. But I can see why a lot of people today have gone, look, this is a bit weird and a bit racist. So I'm not going to
yeah.
watch. I don't really enjoy it, which is understandable.
Oh yeah.
I mean, but to be fair, it is so ridiculous that it is kind of hilarious. The chilled monkey brain bit is so funny,
Mm.
and the fucking eyeball soup as well.
Oh yeah, the
It's
eyeball
just so
soup.
ridiculous. It's
Mm.
so ridiculous. Whose eyeballs are those? What eyeballs? are those?
Yeah.
So
Do
weird.
they have just where did they get the eyeballs from? I don't. Uh.
Don't matter, man.
Yeah.
This is just what they eat in them weird countries, them
Mm.
foreign nations.
Yeah.
Not like us Americans who love steak and apple pie.
Oh, or us Brits who like pie and mash.
A
And that's
fucking
just
eel pie, is that what you're talking about? The classic food.
yeah.
That is our culture.
The Yorkshire pudding. That's also a good culture.
Mate, Yorkshire pudding's great. Let's not.
Yeah.
I want to make fun of the real bad food in the UK.
I mean.
The ones that people don't know about across the pond.
Mm.
Shout out to all my US listeners. I hope your President Trump comes back. All right, no enough.
I just want to tap that she's joking. Like he's taking.
Yeah, of
Yeah.
course, 100%,
Oh
100%.
god.
Trump is going down, guys. He's
Yeah.
going down. Sorry,
Yeah. Fuck Donald
sorry to all
Trump.
the hogs out there who were hoping for him to come back and save you,
Yeah.
but he's not.
He's not coming back. I pray to God he's not. Please
That's fine.
just don't bring him
Well, I
back.
mean, that's a whole conversation for another time.
Yeah.
We'll do a political special. It's fine.
The political special.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
But anyway, so to kind of move on, obviously,
Mm.
we get to the moment where Willie and India kind of having their little like, oh, will they, won't they kind of thing. But
Yeah.
obviously they're like, oh, I'm not that easy. You're not that easy. So then obviously they're like, you're going to come to my room in 5 minutes because you just can't resist me. And
Mm.
obviously during that whole sort, which I think is kind of a funny scene. I like
Yeah.
the idea of it being like, hey, whoa, you're a bit presumptuous, aren't you? And they're like, well, you're being presumptuous. And it's like, oh yeah, you'll be back here in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
They
Exactly.
just, and it's purely lust as well, which is what I think is okay for this relationship. Is that they're both are just like, nah, we know what this is.
Mm.
This isn't a relationship. This is some good old fucking baby.
Mm,
But
exactly.
anyway, but
That
of course,
it was a bit of a funny scene to be fair, especially when he gives her the fruit after
yeah,
you know after
yeah,
the dinner scene, and then they start playing a little bit, and He's like, "Oh yeah, I'll tell you my results in the morning," and
Yeah,
then that's the thing that sets it off. But I do
yeah.
like how and then he gets back to his room and he
I'll
gets
tell you my
attacked
result.
by and then it goes and then it just goes really dark. Like somebody sneaks into his room and they tries to murder him, like strangling him.
Yeah, yeah.
And then
It's one of the cultists, obviously. Like,
mm,
tries to assassinate him, uh, which
and then
ends with Indiana Jones hanging him, which is
yeah, which is
pretty.
proper dark. Like
It is. This whole
yeah,
I think if I remember correctly from because a lot of people have wondered why this film is in particular is so violent and dark in comparison to the other ones is that
mm.
I think George Lucas was going through a divorce at the time.
Yeah, I think him and Spielberg are both going through
Yeah,
divorces.
so I think they were a little
Yeah,
bit like yeah, we're kind of just like not in a good place right now, so we're just going to make this one a little bit darker.
mm.
But
I
I
get
think that's what makes this
mm,
film unique is it does feel a lot more like, horror and dark and a bit kind of a bit more edge to it, which is why I think it's
yeah,
unique. Even though it's not the best one, it's still got a unique presence amongst the films that I don't
yeah.
think another one has managed to do again.
Mm.
Um, yeah, and then obviously Indiana Jones finds an entrance that leads him
To
underground.
the temple to underground, and he gets to the Temple of Doom,
Yes, the
where
actual Temple of Doom. It's in the
where
title, folks.
yeah, which is I quite like the actual the atmosphere and the kind of darker tones, the red kind of red fiery kind of lighting that
Mm.
they've got in
The set
there.
design in general is really
Oh
good.
yeah, the set's
I like
good.
the little the skull dude who's got the two
Mm.
hands that lowers people into the pit,
Oh yeah, and then
into the
like,
flaming pit.
but I think like the part where the guy who like rips people's hearts out.
Oh, that's so
That's
fucking
yeah,
metal. I
that's
love
just
that so much.
that gets you every time. And it's like the fact that he rips their hearts out, but they don't die. It kind of just
Yeah, it's evil
yeah
magic, bro.
yeah. It's just like and whereas like like imagine being alive, but you've had your heart literally ripped out, and you're like looking at it, and you're like I'm not dead, and then you get sacrificed to this god, and then you do end up dying.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's good stuff. I like this scene where you see the cults
Mm,
performing the rituals, and it's like, oh, this is dark and mysterious. Indiana, the guys are in danger. What are they going to do
yeah.
to get out of this
Mm,
kind of situation? But then obviously it ends with Indiana Jones, all three of them being captured. Actually,
yeah.
doesn't it?
Which
Yeah,
is quite scary, like, because when Indy kind of walks off to find the children, and then Willie just goes, "Where's he going?" And you just see the leader just head just slowly move up,
yeah,
and it's just like, ugh! It's like,
yeah.
where'd you come from?
It's like, it's like
And then
spooky, man.
I think Short Round does get captured, but Willie escapes, but then she gets recaptured, but you don't see her getting
I
recaptured.
think so, yeah,
Yeah.
because obviously the next major thing is oh, there's the bit where he's in the mine, isn't there as well?
Mm.
Indiana Jones ends up in the mine to find the kids, and he starts a fight, but he loses,
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then he obviously gets captured and gets brainwashed and
Mm.
turned into a mindless cultist
Yeah.
by
And
drinking evil juice.
yeah.
And
You
of
do.
course, I should mention I really like Molaram as well, the high priest
Mm.
of the evil religion. I really like him as a character. I think he's just a good like evil wizard villain.
Mm.
He feels like an evil wizard. He feels like he should be shooting lightning bolts out of his hands and stuff.
Yeah.
But he doesn't do
Mm.
that. He just rips out your heart.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. He just rips out. He just. Well, I mean, I feel like ripping out your heart is a bit. I feel like ripping out your heart is definitely more terrifying than shooting lightning bolts. I would imagine.
Yeah, but shooting
Like,
lightning bolts is more immediate. It's more an immediate effect, isn't
mm,
it? It's like
yeah,
like that. But
yeah.
yeah,
But I don't think he's a very immediate guy. I think I think he likes his kills nice and slow,
yeah.
nice and slow.
And then
Um,
obviously we lead into the scene where Willie's about to be sacrificed.
yeah. But she didn't get her heart ripped out though, which is
Yeah, well,
yeah.
they couldn't do that to a woman, could they?
All
Because
right.
women are fragile and weaker than men, so they can't. We can't show that kind of violence on screen, Connor.
Mm,
It's just not right.
yeah, I guess so. Oh god. I hope people don't.
um,
Yeah.
yeah, go on. Sorry.
I hope people don't take that of the being
No,
sarcastic when they say
anything I
yeah.
say like that is very obvious. Is a joke. I don't believe
Mm.
any of that stuff. I
Oh
think you
yeah.
can show women get shot in the head on screen. I think you can show them getting violently murdered as well.
Mm.
I enjoy it personally more than watching men. No, I'm kidding. Kidding. Anyway,
Yeah.
so obviously this then leads to the bit where Showrun is trying to break Indy out of it, and he's
Yeah.
like, and then obviously what works is literally burning him in the
Yeah.
chest with a with a flaming torch,
Yeah.
and
But
then that breaks the spell, and then
mm,
Indiana Jones gets up to some good old ass kicking.
it does like lead to a good scene where he's telling Indy, I love you. You're my best
I
friend.
love you. You're my best friend. Oh no, I
Yeah.
can't do that accent. Never mind. Cut it out. Cut
Yeah.
it out. Cut it out. Cut it out.
Yeah, in
I love
post.
you, Indiana Jones. You're my best friend," said the
Mm.
tiny. Asian orphan. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's actually a very sweet scene, and then he's able to break him out of it, but by completely by accident though. Like he's just kind of
Yeah, he's just trying
yeah,
what he can, but it works, and then Indiana Jones comes in, and it's just a nice little thing where Short
yeah,
Round's on his own, and he has to solve the scenario. He doesn't have anyone there to help him, and then that's when he starts becoming a bit more dependable,
mm,
and starts doing more like sort of like
mm.
yeah, he fights off some of the guards, doesn't he? As well.
Yeah, he does.
It's
Yeah,
sort of like this thing where it's like, oh, he's going to be the new Indiana Jones. He's like taking on the characteristics of his
mm,
of Indy and stuff like that,
yeah,
which applies later on in the film as well, and more and more.
yeah,
But
yeah. Would you be up for seeing a short round spin off with him as a grown up? Or
I think at this stage, unfortunately, I think the actor's too old. Sorry,
mm.
unless it's a new actor that plays him.
I mean, he handled himself all of the choreography, everything, everywhere at once.
Yeah, I suppose so. Ki
Yeah,
Hu Kwan, that's his name.
yeah. But I wouldn't. I mean, we'll see what happens. I mean, Disney Plus is quite desperate for content now, so we'll see what happens with that one.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
Um, one scene I think we forgot to mention is a scene in the jungle before they got to the palace.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
We
When
did forget to mention that. Yeah,
yeah, when is that around the campfire when Willie's
yeah,
screaming at all the
and
animals?
obviously Indy's explaining Short Round's sort of backstory
Mm,
about how his parents were killed in a bombing
yeah.
in China, and he sort of adopted him as sort of like just to look after him.
Mm,
And then obviously we have the great scene where Willie says, "What is it again? I would rather be wrapped up by a snake or something like that." And then the
yeah.
snake drops down, and then she just fucking grabs
Yeah.
it and throws it because
Just
she
throws
thinks
it
it's the
away.
elephant's trunk. It's so
Yeah.
good. That's a pretty good scene.
Mm,
Um, yeah. So following on from like freeing Indiana Jones, they obviously go back into the mine,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
I say they save Willie as well. I should
Yeah,
mention that they did rescue him.
they save Willie, and then Indy's like, "We're leaving, all of us." And so he goes back into the
Yeah.
mine to like free all the kids.
Yeah, he fucking beats up a bunch
Beats
of
up,
evil
beats them
cultists. He
all
beats
up.
that big dude up.
Yeah, and then that big dude gets crushed by
Oh yeah,
the
he does. He gets crushed in the roller,
yeah
doesn't? Oh, that's so
in the
awesome.
boulder. Then Short Round beats up the prince because he's using voodoo on Indy.
Yeah, but
Um,
he's also obviously under the effect of
yeah,
the
yeah,
trance as well.
mm,
So,
yeah,
but and he frees him as well from the trance by burning him.
yeah, and and then they have the cart chase, which is pretty epic, pretty
Yeah,
awesome.
that's pretty good. Yeah, the
Yeah.
cart scene, riding through the mine carts is pretty
Mm.
cool.
I love how like yeah, and it's just amazing, really. And they've
Yeah.
like
It's a good
mm,
sequence. It's just a really fun sequence of
oh,
watching,
yeah,
guys being almost like on a roller coaster
yeah.
kind of thing, and
So
but
there
then they're also
was
fighting
oh yeah,
off
it definitely
dudes.
looked. I mean, I think there is a roller coaster of it at Disneyland.
Yeah,
Uh,
that won't surprise me.
mm. And there's that one scene though where they're trying to drag the villains are trying to drag short rounds into their minecart, and Indy, and so it's kind of like they're like they've got his legs, Indy's got his arms, so they're kind of like pulling on him, and you can just tell like I think the camera like pans upwards, so you see it from like the ceiling or something like that, and
Mm.
then you just tell that the short round's just a mannequin in that scene like
Yeah,
the whole
definitely. Yeah, 100%. But yeah,
yeah.
they ain't gonna actually do that to the
Oh
kid.
god, even for the 80s and 90s, that was still that was still extreme.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um, but then obviously they managed to escape
yeah,
through that mines, which then gets them onto that cliff face, doesn't it?
gets them
Because
onto
obviously
the yeah,
the mines get flooded as well, don't they?
yeah.
And then they climb up the cliff after that, and then they
Mm.
try to cross the bridge.
Oh yeah, then Willie lets
And then
out
Indiana Jones
yeah,
tries to not Indiana Jones, Short Round tries to jump on the bridge to show that it's strong and nearly falls
yeah,
through.
yeah, getting Lily's eaten by crocodiles or
Oh
alligators, I
yeah,
guess.
there's like alligators at the bottom,
Mm.
and then obviously they try to cross the bridge, but then Molaram and his cultists swarm both sides,
Yeah,
and they're like, and oh, and Indiana Jones has the rocks as well. I totally forgot he stole them back,
yeah, he's still on
and they're
back
trying
and
to get them back off of him. Yeah, and
mm,
then obviously that leads to a great scene where Indiana Jones cuts the bridge,
mm.
and
Which
then they're just
which
dangling on a cliff fighting off
yeah,
cultists
yeah, which is amazing, really.
who get eaten by crocodiles when they fall down into the river.
Yeah, I mean, it is just an amazing scene, and you do, like when it, like obviously because this is a prequel, you know Indy's not going to die, but there is a
Mm.
part of you like especially when the leader, whose name I've literally just forgotten, even though
Molaram,
it's Mulleran, when Mulleran like falls down and he kind of like grabs Indy, and Indy falls down with him, and they both grab on
yeah,
to the
and
bridge.
then he tries to steal his heart. Then
yeah, and
Indiana
then
Jones is like, "Fuck you! I also know magic," and then he makes the stones ignite
yeah,
on fire, and then he
and
tries
then
to grab the last one before it falls in the river, and then
and
that
then
causes him to let go of the bridge.
I think
Yeah,
it's because it's still hot and so it burns his hand.
yeah. That's the
Yeah,
idea. The pain makes him go like, "Oh fuck," and then he falls off. But then Indiana Jones is protected because he's on the side of good, bro.
yeah, exactly. And
Because he
then
betrayed Shiva. You
mm,
betrayed Shiva.
he climbs up the bridge. They go back to the village. He gives
Oh,
them
and
back the stone.
the British Indian Army also
Mm,
shoot the remaining
yeah,
cultists.
yeah,
Oh, also we forgot about the scene that mirrors from the first film, where the two guys with swords try to come up to attack Indiana Jones.
mm,
He then goes to reach for his pistol, but then he hasn't got it.
yeah.
So then he has
Oh
to fight them
yeah,
both off. Yeah, that's it. That's
yeah.
a nice little
He's
homage
got
to the first film.
yeah, and then it also gives a scene a scene for the Pirates of the Caribbean movies to rip off when is running racing up screaming with a sword, and then he sees all the other cultists chasing running towards him, and he just races off.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is quite
Yeah.
funny. Which is quite funny. I think Harrison Ford does get a lot of good comedic moments in this.
Yeah,
Uh,
this film is definitely one of the ones where it has a lot of stuff that is really good in separation, but when it comes together, it can be a little bit like weird.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah,
I can definitely understand why people don't like this one as much.
mm.
And then to just kind of cap off the film, really, they go back to the village, return the remaining rock, and then they,
And then
yeah, ride
yeah,
off into the sunset.
right
And
from the sunset.
the kids are back. They're all free and safe.
Yeah,
The villagers are really happy to
mm.
see them again.
and
And
we never see Short Round or Willie ever again.
nope, because people did not like them. At least that's
Yeah,
my interpretation
yeah.
of it, anyway.
But you know what? Temple of Doom.
It's all right. It's definitely the weakest
Hmm,
of the first three
it's
films, but it's not like a
it's
terrible film.
it's the weakest, but you know what? I don't no way that doesn't mean in any way it's bad. It's still a good movie in my eyes, and I like like the more darker tone, the more B horror movie kind of elements into it. Yeah, it can be a little bit mean spirited at points, and some of the comedy can fall a little bit flat at
Mm,
points. But honestly, like it's still an enjoyable time, and
yeah.
it's part of the original trilogy, and I think people, if you've not watched it in a while, you should definitely give it a
Yeah, I think you
rewatch.
should watch. I can definitely see why people find this film like more problematic out of the three of them, but I think they've all got
Yeah,
problematic elements in them, honestly.
yeah, mm,
Um, and also just in general, I think this one has got the most like out of the original three. Well, has got the most like sort of like dark tone with the very explicit like dark magic and stuff. And I think people find that stuff a little off putting at times. I
yeah,
mean, I love that stuff. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I'm a big fan of like Conan the Barbarian. I love that sort of evil magic, like
yeah,
wizards doing evil things, and then the hero needs to stop them
mm,
from performing human sacrifices and stuff. I think that stuff is just really fun. But it definitely feels
yeah,
out of place. I can definitely see why, especially if you've watched Raiders of the Lost Ark, which is a much more well-rounded film and is very much about a much more concrete story that you watch in the second one,
yeah,
you'd be a bit like, this is a bit weird. I wasn't expecting this.
mm,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. But I mean, we still find things to enjoy about Temple of Doom.
Oh yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
mean,
I definitely
yeah,
think it's not. If you're watching the three films, like watch them all. Like,
yeah, just
Why
watch
would you
them
skip
all.
one? You don't skip in Temple of Doom. You
Don't
don't.
skip Temple of Doom.
We don't skip Temple of Doom in this house.
No, 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 never again. We're never going to. I'm never skipping Temple of Doom ever again.
No, exactly.
It's pretty good. It's a pretty damn good film.
Do, 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 do,
And
do,
with
do,
that out
do.
of the way, should we move on to Last Crusade, Alex? Do you think we
Yes.
should? The Last Crusade, called the Last
Oh,
Crusade because it was supposed to be the last one, but
well, you know how it goes,
uh,
man.
yeah,
That's
you know
how it goes, pal.
just how it goes, really. I feel like this is my probably my favorite indie movie of all
Hmm.
of them. I love Raiders and Temple, but Last Crusade for me is my favorite one. I think that it's got definitely got that element of it's just a fun, enjoyable adventure movie. And I do love the chemistry that Sean and Harrison have, and but yeah, and the fact that it's also about a son trying to essentially just reconnect with his dad after all this time. Um,
Yeah,
and the fact
pretty
that
much.
it does a good job tying everything, all the loose ends up, and ending the franchise. At least that's what we thought at the time. Uh, but it's still a good movie. It's a great film. To be honest, I don't know what's your opinion on Last Crusade.
Yeah, I really like this film a lot. I definitely think it's probably it's probably the best one. Well, maybe not. I personally prefer Raiders of the Lost Ark anyway, but I can understand why a lot of people this is their favorite one because I think
Mm,
it once again, like the first film, it's got such a tight script
yeah.
and the plot is really straightforward and simple, and
Mm,
it's got the dark themes in it, but they're not as prevalent as they are in Temple of Doom in particular.
yeah.
Um, I think for a lot of people, I can see why they went Raiders like, oh, fantastic. Then India Temple of Doom went, eh. Then they went to three and they were like, oh, right, I was back to being great again. So I think
Yeah.
I can see why this one is so beloved still,
Mm.
especially because as well it adds a lot more context to Indiana Jones as a character. Obviously,
Oh yeah.
the film literally begins with him as a teenager.
Yeah, and you
Um,
see is
yeah,
basically seeing see his origins basically,
yeah,
uh,
essentially, yeah,
like how he how he was never he wasn't scared of of snakes
yeah.
before obviously falling into the circus and
Yeah,
getting covered in
it
them.
sets up his literal
Mm,
phobia through a traumatic experience, which is
yeah,
how a lot of people develop phobias.
and I love
And
how
yeah,
I love how he shows how he got his whip, he stole it from the circus,
yep,
how he got his hat,
the Timberline,
one of the
grave
smugglers or
robbers, yeah,
grave
grave
robbers
robbers.
just gave was like, "You lost today, kid, but you don't have to like it," and he just gave them his hat, and I
Yeah,
just love that. That's how I love how like somebody felt sorry for him.
it's just like this is the make building blocks and the making of Indiana Jones as a character. And what I
Yeah,
really love about this whole sequence is that it only takes up like what 15 minutes of the film.
yeah, it doesn't like bog it
And he
down.
just does everything perfectly to set up Indiana Jones as a character. We know
Mm,
so much from this beginning. We know Indiana Jones even as a kid was a pretty fearless dude who just used to go around like it didn't matter to him if there was danger there. He was gonna if he felt like the artifact was like worth getting, he was gonna put himself in danger to do it. We learn that he's adaptable to scenarios.
mm,
We learn when he goes home after getting the crucifix. Um,
yeah,
that he's we learn from that he's obviously started to learn from a very young age because his father was a professor as well,
yeah,
if I'm correct.
yeah,
And you can see the building blocks of Indiana Jones as a character through. You
mm,
can understand how he went from being this little plucky teenager to then becoming the adventurer that he is now.
yeah,
In modern day, or well, in 1938 or whenever this film's
yeah.
set.
Well, I love how as well, like yeah, like this one because this one was supposed to be the last one, so they're firing on all cylinders. They're like, this is our last go. This is essentially our last go. So we're just gonna end it on the highest note we can end it on. So we're gonna show Indy's origins. We're gonna delve more into his past. We're gonna have at the heart of it have a relationship, be about a story of him reconnecting with his estranged father. Um, we're gonna have his love interest halfway through turn against him because she turns out to be a Nazi.
Yeah. Well,
Uh,
she's this is another thing that I think this film I feel like does better than the other two is Indy's love interest in quotation marks is a femme fatale, a classic which is a classic trope of noir films, and
yeah,
especially because this one takes place in a year which most of these sort of noir and serial films, these sort of adventure serials which involved a lot of Nazi characters was
mm,
usually set around this time period. So it's just a nice like little homage to like that sort of old school cinema that
mm,
obviously was a big inspiration of Indiana Jones. So I think Elsa Schneider is probably actually the best character,
mm,
the best female protagonist that the series has had because she's not she's a an academic like Indiana Jones, but
yeah,
obviously um unlike Indiana Jones, she has very strict loyalties to
mm,
the Nazis because she is literally a Nazi,
yeah,
and yeah, yeah. I mean, and then obviously betrays Indiana Jones because she's his equal.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
exactly.
Which is what a lot of the femme fatale characters, while they were kind of written as sort of like oh, women are dangerous kind of thing, men shouldn't trust women kind of thing. A lot
Mm,
of them, I think Elsa's written in a way that makes her more of an equal to Indiana Jones instead of
yeah,
like a warning about like the behavior of women or anything like that. So
mm,
yeah, I really like her as a character. Just to kind
yeah,
of go off topic there, but yeah,
yeah.
I really do like her.
Uh, I do like how after the opening, but I like how like the opening action sequences, how long it goes for, but how it like kind of again how it kind of runs, how like he gets caught and then goes onto like this train, so it's circus train, and then he's
Hmm.
able to use magic to like get off the train and race back to his dad's house, and then it turns out that the burglars were like paid off by the sheriff
Mm.
to like yeah. But I do like how it cuts back. You know, he gets the hat. The guy puts the hat on his head, and then he cuts back to him as an adult, and he's literally is it's him with the exact same guys as before.
Yeah, and
He's
he
trying,
gets
and he's
punched in the face. Yeah.
yeah, because like he's trying to
It took
get
him.
the
It took him a lifetime, but he managed to get back at him, which is great.
mm, I like that's kind of like a grudge he could never really let go because he was like, you know, it belongs in a museum.
And I go, so do you.
Yeah.
Which I
Also,
think is the only time in the series he mentions that sort of idea of it belonging in a museum. Like
yeah.
that's sort of what his intentions are from the artifacts. But
Like you could say like because this is set after Raiders, so maybe like after Raiders of the Lost Ark, he kind of developed more of a sense of oh, I think these things should probably be in a museum
maybe, yeah, who
because
knows?
after like you could say like after losing the Ark because he got sent to the warehouse. So after so in every way he lost it. So after a while he just thought, you know what, maybe these things should be preserved in like a museum somewhere, not just for greed and money
Oh,
and
excuse me very much.
yeah. So you could say like maybe after Raiders, he sort of learned that lesson. Um, and because obviously he's the only reason he's really going after the Cup of Christ is because you know his dad was going after it and his dad got caught.
Hmm.
He's so really he's only really going after it to
Well,
save his dad.
Well, at this stage, he
Yeah.
doesn't really know what's happened to his dad. He just knows that he's
Mm.
disappeared. He doesn't really know the reason why. But obviously, as well as him searching for his dad, which I think is Indy's secret motivation, because
Yeah.
as we said, Indiana Jones is a selfish person, so he
Yeah.
does go because it's like the Holy Grail, man. I mean, that's like
The Holy
one of
Grail.
the
Yeah.
most significant like archaeological would be one of the most significant archaeological discoveries in history.
Mm.
So his goals are still pretty much his own, which
Mm.
leads him then to travel to Venice
Yeah.
because he's following his dad's notes from the diary that he received,
Yeah.
and yeah, it
I really
just follows on from there, really.
I really like that prop. Like, I love old diaries, like people use to like write down their notes and their findings. I don't know why there's something about like old like or like people like diaries that people's like you know that people use that those kind of props. I just love in these kind of adventure films where
Mm.
they look kind of old, they look like kind of classic and murky, and I don't know. There's something about them I just quite like.
No, no, it's always a
Yeah.
nice little thing to see.
Mm.
Excuse me very much. Yeah, obviously, after they search Venice for a while, they go beneath the library, don't they?
Mm.
And then they found the catacombs under there, which
Yeah.
contains I think it's a shield, isn't it?
Yeah.
That says that the path to the Grail begins in Alexandria,
Yeah, and you
which
got
yeah,
yeah, X marks the spot
or
basically.
Alexandretta, sorry, or something like
Yeah,
that. Yeah,
I do love how just coming
X
back
marks
to
the spot.
yeah, coming back to that gag. I love how like the gag where he's trying to break in to get into the pathway. He's slamming the pole down on the ground to break it open, and
Mm.
it's synced up with this librarian who's like stamping books.
Oh yeah,
And he's
yeah,
just
of course.
like what
That's
the
a nice little editing twist. Yeah,
he's just like what the
that's why she couldn't hear it.
yeah, and and yeah, so but yeah, they get down there. Marcus stays up to like keep watch, but he
I'll
gets
keep
knocked out.
watch.
He gets knocked out.
Mm.
But FYI though, I do love how Marcus actually joins them on this one.
Yeah,
I'm glad that he got these time to shine because he was only in Radius for like two scenes and well
yeah.
three maybe four
Well,
scenes and that's it.
I think it's because people were kind of a bit annoyed with the lack of adult characters in the last film for a long time, so they were like, "Ah, we'll bring this guy on."
Yeah, but he's such a good comedic. He's a good comedic foil
No,
though.
no, yeah, he was good. Yeah.
Yeah, I love how like you know does anybody here speak English? I think I'm lost. um, yeah,
Yeah, and then obviously after they leave the catacombs, they're greeted by a mysterious group
yeah,
who attack them and lead to a cool boat chase scene across
mm,
Venice.
yeah,
It's a good
yeah.
set piece.
That both scene is great. It's you know it's impact. It's got the same kind of it's suspense and impact that most action sequences have, particularly at the very end when they're going up against the turbine of the not turbine, but the part of the boat where you know it spins
Yes.
around. Yeah, and it's chopping the boats off, and then and he's
Mm.
trying to like you know threaten this guy, being like, "Oh yeah, if you don't talk, you're gonna die." And the guy's just like, "Well, my soul's prepared. How's yours?"
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I just
Yeah,
love
that's a
that
good joke.
like he owns them like so much, and then but then
Yeah.
they don't become like I wouldn't say they become friends, but they do end that scene by on goodish terms where
Well,
he
yeah, it's
tells him,
because
yeah,
they're obviously part of an order that's meant to protect the Grail, so they're trying to
mm,
stop people from. Well, they're mainly trying to stop the Nazis from getting it, but
yeah,
in general, they want to keep people away from it. But the guy, the leader of that group, who Indy saves, tells him
mm,
that where his father's being held captive, which obviously, yeah,
yeah, and then
immediately goes to save him.
mm. And then their hotel rooms get ransacked, probably mostly by
Mm,
Indy's love interest, no doubt, because she's looking for the diary, she's trying to get the pages,
mm.
and then her and Indy hook up, and then
Ooh.
they go to the castle, where they
Yeah.
find his dad.
We should also mention, just to mention as well, that Indy sends Marcus off to
Yeah, Indy sends Marcus off,
Alexandra
yeah, to meet Saul,
to Misala. Yeah.
and he gives him the pages that are needed to keep
Yes.
with him.
Yes. Yes. Keeps it
Yeah.
safe.
But I do love how when he gets in there, he's got a he's putting on a Scottish accent. He's like, I think I caught a sniffle, something like that.
I think I caught a
Um,
sniffle.
because obviously his dad, which makes sense, I guess, because his dad's played by Sean Connery, who
Of
is
course, yeah.
Scottish.
He
So I
is.
guess so obviously Indy picked up on that, but it shows how good of an actor Harrison Ford was, how he can actually do a pretty decent Scottish accent, in my opinion, anyway.
It can copy Sean Connery's one at the very
Mm.
least.
I just,
Yeah,
I love
but
how
then
they,
obviously,
mm,
when they infiltrate the castle, it's obviously the big plot twist is revealed that Elsa Schneider has been evil all along.
yeah, or as Sean Connery goes, she's a Nazi.
She's a Nazi. God damn it! I hate it when
Yeah.
that happens.
Mm. I love how when they're arguing, when Indy saves his dad and his dad's, and the Nazi soldiers just like Dr. Jones, yes,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
they're both
Yeah.
answering in unison, and then
And then obviously, yeah, yeah. Sorry, go on.
his dad's like, you brought my diary all the way back here. And then Indy like whips out the gun out of the Nazi's hand and shoots him, and his dad's just like,
Of course, yeah.
"Look what you did! I can't believe what you did!"
I can't believe
And
what you did.
it's like, well, that's what happens. Welcome to America.
Yeah, that's it, man.
Yeah,
In Germany, or
yeah.
Austria, in fact.
Italy, Italy.
Yeah, of
Well,
course. Yeah, that is a scene
yeah,
in Italy, isn't it? Yeah, sorry.
mm,
Um, and then obviously we learn as well that Donovan, who originally sent Indy to get the Grail, is also working with the Nazis as well.
mm.
I tell
Donovan,
you,
he is also a good villain. To be fair, like
tut tut.
he's very. Would you say he's more evil than Belloc? Or is he on the same kind of radius as Belloc?
I think he's more evil than Belloc just because his morals are pretty much like I just want to be immortal.
Mm,
Like
yeah.
I want to be immortal, and I think the easiest way to get the immortality is to work with the Nazis, which are a bunch, which that's working with Nazis, which is
Mm,
something we don't like in this house. So
yeah.
there you go. So
Mm.
he's pretty evil by association and just being involved with Nazis. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and he's so slimy as well, and sort
Mm.
of like, "Oh, you didn't take my advice, Doctor Jones," and it's like, "Oh, fuck you."
um. Yeah, and then after that, obviously Marcus is captured, isn't he, by the Nazis, and
Yeah, yeah,
when he arrives.
He's captured. Indy and his dad escape during that really funny scene where they're tied up,
Oh
and
yeah, and
then
then they set
yeah,
the castle on fire.
yeah, and and they get to like the Nazi war room where they're planning the next attack,
Yeah.
and then like they just see him and they just go get them, and then they get trapped on the other side that's set on fire, and
Yeah.
yeah, which is a cool action sequence, and it's got some good comedic timing as well. It
Oh yeah, yeah.
has a bit of a slight Three Stooges kind of ish vibe to it with the
Yeah,
rotating door.
like Abbott and Costello kind of like
Yeah,
physical humor to it because obviously Indy's dad's like at this stage a relatively old man. He's not going to be like doing
mm,
like a bunch of action, is he? So Indy
yeah,
kind of has to pull the weight in that scenario where he's the one
mm,
having to do most of the action, which makes him a more likable character though. To be fair,
yeah. I think
um,
Sean Connery did do a fair bit of action movies even when he was starting to get on a bit.
oh
Like,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Don't get me wrong, he
yeah,
did, but I'm just saying
yeah,
the character that he's playing in this is
mm,
not that kind of character.
yeah.
Um, Yeah, so they escape the castle, don't they?
They
They manage.
escape.
Yeah.
They escape the castle. They go on the little motorbike. The motorbike crashes. They steal someone's car.
Hmm.
The Nazi, the Nazi in the plane where he just follows them into the tunnel. for
Yeah.
some reason, and they're just looking at, and he's just like the wings come off, and he's like skidding aside them, and
Yeah.
they just look at each other
It's
like,
so
what?
ridiculous.
Even the Nazi, even the Nazi pilot's just like,
What
yeah,
the
even
hell
I
am I
don't know
doing?
what's. It's like, even I don't know what's going on here. Um,
Yeah.
and then like they get out, and then I think they stop on a beach somewhere, and then
Oh,
they,
yeah, and then,
yeah,
he does the thing with the umbrella where he sends the birds
yeah,
flying at the other plane,
yeah.
doesn't he? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
They get caught in like they get caught in the they get caught in the engine,
A
and then
great scene.
they crack. Yeah, it is
Great
a good
scene.
scene. I do like how Indy's dad is just there like I can't believe everyone's getting killed, and then it's just like it happens to me all the time.
Yeah, happens to me all the time. And then obviously, so after escaping the castle, what did they do after that? Yeah,
They get on
they go
the
to Berlin,
yeah
don't they? Yeah.
yeah they
Oh,
get
they
on
get
the
on the blimp,
well
don't
they
they?
get on the blimp,
Ah,
and then
yes,
the
that's it.
blimp gets the blimp gets turned around, so they have to. I think they steal another plane or something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah, because then Indy's
yeah,
dad's trying
that's
to
it.
shoot
Yeah,
it
yeah.
down.
There's a lot of action set pieces
Oh god, yeah.
in
Like I
this
think
film.
that's why I was talking about it, because this was supposed to be the last one. Like
They just
obviously
went all out for it.
they
Yeah,
did they just like let's go all out with this one. Let's just end it on the highest note. Yeah, like end it on the highest note they can. So high, in fact, that
yeah.
the next film, well, we'll see what happens when we
Well, we'll
see
see
it.
what happens with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously, we've got to mention Hitler signing the diary.
Oh yeah. He signs the
Which is
diary.
so funny because they're obviously there during a book burning ceremony,
Yeah.
and then he just literally looks directly at Indiana Jones and just signs it for him, and then just walks off, and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
perfect.
God. God. That is
That is a great scene.
that is a great scene. And then he steals the pages back from Elsa. Elsa?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, he does.
Yeah. Steals them back from her, and then they set off to find the Holy Grail, and then the
Yeah,
cult
they go
people.
to
Yeah,
Hatay, don't they?
yeah, and then the guys from the movement from earlier they come back, and but they all
Hmm.
get killed by the Nazis.
Oh, them evil Nazis.
Mm. And then Indy's father gets captured and gets put in a tank along with
Yeah, and then
Marcus.
Marcus is with them as well. And then
Yeah,
I love this whole scene because not only is it a great action scene, but it's Indiana Jones pulling the weight of like the fact that he has to protect two people.
yeah, he's
And
got
by
to
the
say.
end of it, he's just like, "Oh God, I'm so tired."
But like the whole action sequence though is amazing, because like
Yeah, it's great.
it's probably one of the, I would say it's a one would you say it's one of the longest action sequences in the
Definitely, yeah.
series?
It's
Yeah,
really, really long,
it's
but
really
it's
long,
great.
but
Yeah.
you never I don't never at one point do you ever lose interest in it. Like
Mm,
you're just glued to kind of the screen, just watching like how like Indy jumping on the tank, and then getting his sack caught in the tank, and then
mm,
Indy's dad knocking out the driver, who manages to get the tank to swerve left so Indy doesn't get crushed by rocks. Indy climbs back up, and then they get Marcus off, they get the dad off, and then it's starting to go over a cliff, and then Indy tries to jump off. You don't see him jump off, but he
yeah.
manages to it, and then it falls off, and you see the one of the Nazi generals like screaming,
Ah, yeah, he screams and then he
yeah,
explodes when he
and
hits the
then
bottom of the
it
cliff. It's
explodes,
awesome.
and then
Yeah, awesome, awesome set piece.
it creates that really sweet moment between Sean Connery and where he's like, "My son, he's dead,"
Yeah.
and he's
Henry
and
Jr. And he calls him Henry
June,
Jr. I forgot about that.
yeah,
Calls him Junior, doesn't he?
mm. Which was a sweet moment. And then obviously he sees Indy in a very funny scene, and then and they're like, "We're almost there. We're almost near the
Yeah.
end." So they set off, and then
We're
they
literally almost near the end of the film.
yeah, and then we get to it. We get to the
We get to it.
we get
The
to the Holy
ancient
Grail,
temple that
the
and
temple.
we the temple that it contains in, which obviously the Nazis have tried to get through before,
Mm. And
but
then,
they just can't get through the traps because they don't have the diaries.
yeah, and then they get caught, and then and then obviously Indy's dad gets shot. Um,
Well, yeah, I
yeah,
mean that's sort of the whole point is they wound
yeah,
Henry because obviously it makes Indiana Jones have to get the Grail so he can save his dad.
mm.
And then obviously Indiana Jones just bosses through all the traps as he always does.
Oh yeah, because I think
There's
his
the
dad's
saw
like
blades.
because his dad's whisper like kind of well he obviously can't hear his dad, but like he's reminiscing the cheat codes, should you say,
Yeah.
to get past the traps, and his dad's like whispering them as well, which creates a good like sequence between the two of them where they're
Well,
kind of in
they're
sync.
the similar people in
Yeah,
general. Yeah,
which shows that
they ain't so different after all.
it's
You know,
almost like their father and son. Oh
they
wait.
are indeed. They are indeed.
Um, and like there's definitely it's like when Indy's trying to like dodge the traps, like the axes for a start. and then there's the bridge as
Ah, the
well.
bridge is really cool. I loved that
Yeah,
as a kid when
I,
it's revealed that it's like, ah, it's been there the entire time. You just couldn't
mm,
see it because it was an optical illusion.
yeah. Then like it's kind of I like the design of the bridge as well. But I don't know
Mm.
why it's just designed in a very
It
unique
just
kind of
looks good.
setting.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
They just put a lot of effort into that. Oh, it's good.
yeah. And then the third challenge being probably one of the scariest I'd say in
Oh, is that the
India.
one where it's you got to spell the name of God to get across the gap?
Oh yeah, that's the. I
Or
think
is that the
isn't
one
it?
before it?
I think the name of I think the name of
Jehovah.
Jehovah. Yeah, name Jehovah is yeah. I think it was the spell god's name first.
Yeah,
No, it was the blades, spell god's name, and then the bridge. And
yeah,
then the last task is you have to find actually pick the right cup and
yeah. Of
make
course,
it.
where we find the old Templar there who's lived
Mm,
there for like 1,000 years or whatever.
mm.
Only one of the cups is right. And then
And
obviously that leads to the death of Donovan because obviously
yeah,
he drinks from the wrong cup because he just assumed because it looked
yeah,
really nice that it must be the Holy Grail, but the truth is
yeah.
obviously
You have to
Jesus was
like
a poor man. He was a poor man.
yeah.
He was a carpenter,
Yeah, and you have to yeah,
and that
and he's just and that transformation though, where he just turns into
oh
a
yeah, that's really
skeleton.
cool.
Yeah, that's it's
He like
creepy, but
ages
it's so
rapidly. Yeah,
cool.
it's really cool.
Yeah, and
But Indiana
then
Jones picks the right one.
because Indiana Jones has brains, and
Yeah,
yeah,
and he learned from the mistakes of the villain that killed
mm,
themselves. It was great,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
and he
exactly.
saves
Yeah,
his father. He
mm,
saves his father.
yeah. So let's talk about that for a second. So his dad drinks from from the cup. Does that would that technically make his dad immortal, or does it?
I think the way I always perceived it is that not that his dad's immortal, but that it healed his injuries. Like I think
Mm,
the concept of it is that you have to constantly drink from the Grail to be
oh
immortal,
yeah,
because
yeah,
that's how the Templar stayed alive for so long. Because he's
mm,
got the Grail there and he just constantly drinks it. But obviously, once as we see after they start to leave the temple, it starts to collapse.
yeah,
And
because Elsa accidentally crosses the line.
yep, she
And
does
yeah,
indeed.
and then there's that nice sweet moment between Indy and his dad when Indy's trying to get the Grail, and his dad calls him Indiana
Yeah,
for the very first
Indiana.
time. He's like, "Let it go."
Yeah, and then obviously Schneider dies as well. She falls to her death. Rest in
Yeah, she
peace.
does. She dies to her death, and
Rest in peace. And then
yeah,
they leave and ride off into the sunset.
yeah,
Yeehaw!
because this was supposed to be the last one.
Yeah, it definitely has a lot of finality vibes to it.
It does
Really
feel like
does.
that.
But yeah,
Uh,
it's a great film. We probably missed out a few details, but
Honestly, yeah, but I feel like we definitely did. But honestly, there's so much. This film is so jam packed with stuff that
it is. It's really dense.
it's gonna be it's hard to like even if because I haven't got my notes for these like I usually do because I just thought I've got a guest on we can just bounce off each other.
Oh yeah,
Like
I like
yeah,
I wanna these films are pretty memorable either way. And I've
yeah.
watched them relatively recently as well, so like I
Mm.
still remember a lot of stuff in it.
Yeah, exactly. But it's still a good movie, and the fact that it's got that finale kind of vibe, but it's one of those third parts where it just exceeds your expectations.
Mm. Good send off to Indiana
Mm,
Jones.
and the action sequences are probably at their best in this one, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
The
Oh yeah,
characters are
yeah.
all likable,
It has
and
Indiana Jones killing Nazis, which we like.
yeah, well, yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, who doesn't want Indiana Jones killing
I
Nazis?
want all characters to kill Nazis. It's not just
Mm.
Indiana Jones. That's just a
Oh
me
yeah.
thing.
That's
That's
probably
just
the one.
me.
That's what I'll say this about Dial of Destiny. I'm looking forward to seeing Harrison Ford punch Nazis again, like
Yeah,
even at
man.
his old age. Like if there was ever a year we needed that, it's now. We need that now.
That is the way it should be.
Yeah, that is the way. That is the way that it needs to be.
Indiana Jones needs to fight Nazis. They're just natural enemies.
Mm.
Yeah.
He just needs to
And
find them.
as we know, Connor, this was the
Yeah,
last film and it never came out again.
yeah.
There was no
This
more
was
films
yeah,
after this.
yeah. What's your overall thoughts on Last Crusade?
Last Crusade, oh, it's a great film.
Mm,
Exceptional film. It just it basically in a lot of ways kind of makes up for what are the faults of the previous film, which
mm,
is a very odd film in considering the other two that come with it. But it feels like a sort of triumphant sort of final film
yeah.
to to this character, and yeah,
Yep. And now, Alex, let's talk about the big one.
the big one.
Because as we know, Last Crusade was supposed to be the last one.
Yeah, and
Last Crusade.
it was. There was no other
Yeah,
films after this.
yeah. Until 2008 when they made Indiana
Yeah.
Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Oh no.
It's yeah. Yeah, let's. It's time to talk about Crystal Skull.
All right, let's do it.
Yeah. So I remember when this film was coming out, we because my parents had just introduced me to the other indie movies, so I was really looking forward to this one. So this is the first Indiana Jones I watched in the cinema, and I remember really liking this film when I was younger. I was like, but I think it was I was mainly because I was really, it was because I'm watching a new indie film in the cinema. Like
Hmm.
this is pretty cool. Um, so I didn't really think much of the fridge and the aliens and all that stuff. Um, and then over the years, I've never, my opinion on it has where I'm good. My opinion on this is more I understand why people hate this film. Don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
but I wouldn't really consider it like it's not a great indie film, not as great as the original trilogy. But I don't think it was supposed to, like it was never going to be like this.
No.
It was always going it like that's just a tough act to follow. But I don't hate this film as much as other people do. I can see why people hate it. Um, but for me, I just feel I don't think it. I'm not going to say it's like overhated or anything. But I mean, I don't see it as bad as people make it out to be.
Yeah.
And a part of me does still enjoy it, but I think a lot of that is just due to the fact that again, this was the first one I saw in theaters. But
Yeah.
also, it was good to see Harrison like back again, like kicking ass, and even if he's really old, which is yeah,
That's never
yeah,
going to stop him. So
yeah, that's not going to stop him. But there are some things in there that are a bit goofy, like the Tarzan scene, for example.
I will
Yeah,
get into all the goofy
yeah,
stuff.
yeah. But what do you think? What's your opinion on this film?
I think I think right. So obviously when this film came out, I would have been, when was it, 2008? So I would have been about 14 years old, roughly.
Yeah.
13, 14 years old. So at the time, I liked it, but I could very clearly tell that something was wrong. Like
Mm,
my brain didn't really know what it was, but it was like this still doesn't feel like an Indiana Jones film.
mm,
And I think the best way to describe how I feel about it is this feels like an Indiana Jones film that wasn't directed by the original um, people who made the original films, but it is.
mm,
And I think it's very difficult to understand why this film is the way it is, but I do definitely think George Lucas has probably had a bit more influence on this one now, because
mm.
by the time, because in a lot of ways this film reminds me of what happened with the prequel trilogy, where they
Yeah.
brought the they brought these classic films back, and I think because George Lucas's reputation at that time had become legendary,
Yeah.
I just think people weren't willing to say no, because very much like with the Star Wars films, there are ideas that George Lucas has talked about with old Indiana Jones films, which Steven Spielberg basically just went, "No, we're not doing
Mm,
that because that's ridiculous." And I
yeah.
think by this time, people had just Steven Spielberg had just sort of gone, "All right, whatever. I don't really care anymore.
Mm,
I've reached the stage I'm willing. I'm reaching. I'll make this one last film, but then I'm never coming back to Indiana Jones again."
mm,
And I think
yeah.
and I think no one else was willing to say no to George Lucas, so I think he
Mm,
got a lot of his way in this one. Not to
yeah.
say that he's a bad filmmaker, I just think that, well, he is, but I just think there's certain thing he has certain skills that he's really good at,
Yeah.
but I think he needs a team around him that are willing to fix his mistakes, and that's definitely what I think all filmmaking's about. I don't think there are definitely filmmakers who are good at just about everything and know exactly what they want the film to be, but George Lucas isn't one of them.
Yeah.
And I think he needs other people there to help him out and to tell him,
Mm,
learn when to tell him no.
yeah. Yeah. That's pretty. That is a good. That does sound like a good summary of it.
And as a
Uh.
result,
Mm,
I think, just to kind of cap my point off, as I've gotten older, I've realized that I do not like this film just simply because I know that there are better Indiana Jones films than this.
mm,
There have been better films, and these people have made better films. And I think he does a couple of things. I get what they were trying to do because obviously the
yeah.
actors are older, so they needed to
Mm,
set it in a different time period. But
yeah.
I don't think this time period has the same effect that the previous films did.
Mm,
Which we'll get into more as we sort of talk about the actual film itself. But
yeah.
overall, whenever I watch Indiana Jones, I do not watch this one because
Mm,
I just don't want to watch it because I
yeah.
just don't think it's as enjoyable as the other films.
Mm,
Put it bluntly.
that's fair enough.
But yeah, yeah,
Uh. But yeah. Let's. I still enjoy it somewhat, but I mean,
yeah. That's fair enough.
I wouldn't say it's a great film though. It's like 3 out of 5.
I can definitely see why
Yeah.
some people get a lot of enjoyment. I think 3 out of 5 is too much. Actually, I think it should be a two. It's a 2 out of 5 film for me.
Yeah.
Um, I think, I think it's the kind of film I can see a lot of people watching just because it is so kind of bad.
mm,
that it's like, oh, there's a lot of weird stuff that happens in this film, but it just kind of this is what I mean when I said it sounds like it wasn't written by them,
yeah,
where like uh, it just sort of feels a bit wish-washy. There's like elements there that were in the previous films, but then they just don't really,
mm,
they don't really come forward and don't really take part in anything more that would have been more prevalent in the older films. It just feels like a cheap imitation, you
yeah.
know.
No, I get
That's
that.
ultimately what the problem is for me.
And
Um,
no, I
yeah,
understand that. Yeah, and it's just one of those things where it's it's just one of those things where it does feel a bit. It does feel a bit where like I think for me like it feels a bit like a more of a little bonus kind of adventure you'd get, where you catch up with the character like years later, like he's a lot more like he's an old he's it wouldn't say he's old. I think he's supposed to be in at least his 50s in this one. Uh,
yeah, and I think that's also the problem as well. Is like
mm.
Harrison Ford at this time was in his 60s, and it's not the same, man. It's not the
Yeah,
same as young Indiana Jones. It
it's
just isn't.
but he is like one of the things that I would say that even though it's glad to see Harrison like back in like action sequences and stuff like that again,
Yeah,
I do think that this film does like it's a bit unbelievable like because of his age and everything. Like some of the things they still have him doing things that young Indy would have done.
I still think it's weird that he's still a professor at the university he works at. Like
Mm,
at this stage in his life, Indiana Jones could have easily retired with a pretty good pension and
mm,
yeah, like it just doesn't make any sense that he's still teaching. I
yeah,
guess he just really loves teaching,
yeah. Well, I think.
but
Oh, I think like Dial of Destiny will probably delve a bit into that
well, he's
when
meant
it
to.
comes out.
That's where he's actually retiring, isn't he?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what the film's about. But we'll talk
Mm,
about that a bit more
yeah.
after this one.
Yeah.
But
But yeah, so
so this so
let's
this film is set in 1957
yeah, this is
during the Cold War.
and you can tell it's the Cold War because the Russians are the enemies this time.
Yes, and I think that's
Yeah.
what the problem is with I've got with this film is that the Soviets aren't the same kind of enemy that the Nazis are.
Mm,
Like the Nazis, for lack of a better word, are like the epitome of what a lot of people think of as pure evil.
mm,
I mean, there are other armies and countries that have done similar things to the Nazis,
yeah.
but the Nazis are like the main one in the Western world because that's what we fought against in the Second World War. And in
Mm,
hindsight, we've come to realize that fighting against the Nazis was a good thing.
mm,
Um, but obviously at the time that's a bit more different, but it doesn't really matter. So the problem with the Soviets is that while people don't like the Soviets, they
mm,
haven't really done anything more like irredeemable than the Americans have done or the British have done, or even what the Germans have done. It just kind of feels a little bit more morally ambiguous,
yeah.
and just like it was just a world superpower at the time. There was no like aim to like there's not a it's not a sort of like viewpoint that's based off of like really hateful sort of
Mm,
mindset of murdering an entire groups of people and
yeah.
based on like ethnic cleansing and stuff like that. It's just not the same really. So I think as villains they don't really work to
Yeah.
the same extent.
Mm.
I think it's fine if say Kate Blanchett's character, what's her name again, Arena or something like that, something like that,
Let's have a quick
evil
look.
Russian lady. Where like if she herself was like particularly bad character who just happened to be Russian, but she doesn't really do anything that kind of proves that she is evil. Really, to be honest with you, and I think that's where the problem with this film lies. Is
Yeah.
Indiana Jones isn't like a more like it's better when there are villains for Indy to face who are doing
Mm,
particularly evil things because he's already a pretty ambiguous character, really.
yes.
Indiana Jones.
It's yeah. Her name's Irina. For me, having the Russians as the villain, it's for me. It's a bit. I wouldn't say I don't really. I don't like mind it as much because I feel like it does give kind of a fresh new kind of villain for Indy to face. Because obviously it was Nazis before. So it's just kind of nice to have someone new
Mm.
to go up against. I wouldn't say they're as strong as the Nazis were. That's probably why they're bringing them back for Dial of Destiny. But
Yeah,
I,
because
I still like,
yeah,
but I still find them quite intimidating, quite villainous. I think Kate Blanchett does a really good job as Irina, like giving up this like leader
yeah,
with brute
he's a
force
lot better.
and with like brute force. I think like obviously I think like Mads Mikkelsen is gonna completely Matt Mikkelsen's villains in the new one's probably gonna be much better because it's Mads Mikkelsen and
Because
he's
you know what I
yeah.
thought that this film would have been a better way to deal with, like, you could shoehorn the Nazis in, because obviously,
Mm,
during this time, this is when the sort of early space technology was being developed. And
mm.
I don't know if you know much about this, but a lot of the scientists that worked on that
Yeah,
in America were
yeah.
Nazis. Yeah,
Yeah, because
were yeah.
that's actually part of the plot for the new one. Because it's
Yeah,
set yeah.
and that makes sense that they've done that there, because
Mm,
that is just a part of American history, which is and British history and Russian history, that they did snap all the scientists from Russia, from sorry, not from Russia, from Germany,
mm.
after the end of the Second World War, because they
Yeah,
were developing things, and they were like, oh well, we'll pardon you for your crimes if you come and work with us, and we'll give you a whole new identity.
yeah.
Which I'll leave it up to the viewers to decide whether that's
Mm,
morally you know
mm.
whether that was a good thing or a bad thing. I mean, I know
Yeah.
definitely where I stand on, because you can't trust them Nazis
Yeah.
no matter what.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, anyway,
Mm,
so obviously this film begins with
if they're back in the warehouse of that we saw in the
well,
ending
we
of
need to talk about something very important first, which is that they are but where Indiana Jones begins in the back of a moving car,
yeah,
in
yeah.
a trunk, in a boot of a
Mm,
moving car.
yeah.
Now,
I do you wanna go first or?
you go first. Why not?
I will say though, his reintroduction, I really love Indy's reintroduction in this film. Like, they throw off Ray Fisher's character, um Ray Fisher's character?
Oh,
Mac. Yeah,
Ray Winston, you
Ray
mean?
Winston, yeah, sorry, not Ray
Yeah.
Fisher.
Yeah, he
Ray
plays now, Mac is an interesting character that I wanna talk about at some
mm,
point, but
yeah,
we'll leave that for now.
yeah. So you throw you see Mac, and then then they throw Indy out, but you don't see his face. You see the back of his head, and
Mm,
then the music cuts off. The music kicks in. Um, it's sort of whimsical kind of music kicks in. He walks towards the hat. He picks it up. You see his shadow putting it back on. Then you hear the famous do 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 do
yeah, and
do
it's like,
do
"Oh,
like it's
there he
building
is, it's
up,
Indiana
and
Jones.
then like he turns around. And he just goes Russians, and I'm
I
like,
hate
yeah,
Russians.
welcome back.
I hate Russians for
Like
some reason."
I just love that line where I just love that introduction where it's like because we hadn't seen him in how many years was it since Last
Well, since
Crusade?
it's Last Crusade, I think Last Crusade was like 1989
Yeah, and this was 2008.
and 2008, yeah, so it's a long time.
Yeah,
A
because
long time.
see, I hadn't seen him in ages, and you see him, and now you see him turn around. He turns around, and he's like, "Yes, welcome
Yeah, I
back,
really
Indiana
like it, but
Jones."
it comes back and he's an old man, and I really
Yeah,
enjoy that.
I didn't find.
Uh,
I mean, the fact he was an old man, I didn't really mind.
I was like, "He's an old man."
Yeah, I just love the part where he's
Ah,
like,
well, Harrison
"Yeah,
Ford still did a good job as Indiana Jones.
mm,
Like, he can just kill it every time.
oh yeah,
Um, so I think the thing that is interesting, what I don't like about this intro is obviously it's not a cold open,
mm,
where it's about a different story. I would have liked it if it did start off that way, because I think what's really weird about this whole intro scene is I don't really understand why the Russians have brought Indiana Jones here specifically. I don't know how he was able to
mm,
locate the alien, because obviously they're after this alien corpse that landed
yeah,
in Roswell. Um, because obviously it's Area 51 that they're in,
mm,
and I don't understand how Indiana Jones would know where it is specifically,
mm,
other than because his friend studied it for a bit, I guess.
yeah."
I don't understand why he would know that though. Why would they not bring the other dude in to do it? His friend who was
John
actually studying
Hurts,
it. Yeah,
the
John Hurt's
Ox,
character.
Ox, yeah,
It just feels very much like we need to get Indiana Jones in this warehouse because this is the warehouse where the Ark is, and blah 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 blah
yeah.
blah. And
We
like,
have to fucking shoehorn that fucking.
yeah,
You didn't have to do that. Like that's the thing.
yeah.
Like you didn't. That's
Well, I
such like
knew it was the
yeah,
hangar. As soon as I saw it, I was like, "That's the hangar where the Ark is." I know it. I know it. And they
mm,
showed it still anyway, and I was like, "Oh, cool. Maybe that's going to come up later in the plot." And it didn't.
yeah.
It was just there for, or maybe they thought they were going to do sequel that was going to be like, a
Ra-
thing involving the Ark, but
yeah, Raiders
it
Lost Ark
didn't.
2 or something like that.
Yeah,
So I know
whatever.
because I remember them saying they had ideas for a fifth and a sixth one that never
Well, yeah,
the
because
fifth one did materialize eventually, but that sixth film is not happening.
it's funny though because the film was successful. You know what I
It
mean?
was,
It did
yeah. It
really
was
well at the box office.
yeah. It didn't do that bad.
But
I don't think it didn't do that bad critically either. To be honest, like I think people were
yeah,
quite
I don't think it's as
kind.
bad as the prequel trilogy. I should
Yeah,
stress that, by the way. It's not as bad as the prequel trilogy.
yeah,
There are some enjoyable moments in this. I just personally don't like it because I just prefer the other films over it,
mm,
and I just prefer to watch them films.
yeah,
Plus, I just don't. Yeah, I don't like the whole alien it's ancient alien thing. It's
Y-
so fucking lame.
Yeah, the alien thing is a bit. I'm not too sure how I feel about the aliens being in this one
Yeah,
because it's a
I
bit.
think
I mean, yeah, it's a new thing, and the
yeah.
actual like crystal skulls are they look cool, like the actual design
Well,
of them.
and it's based on a real thing,
Yeah, well, they're all based
from
on they're all
like
based on real.
Aztec. Yeah, like,
Mm.
but they're not alien skulls
Oh yeah,
specifically. The actual
'cause-
crystal skulls.
oh yeah,
They're
like
just
because that
human skulls. Yeah.
that's what like I was saying earlier. That's kind of what they do with these movies. They take
Mm.
an actual like artifact and they kind of exaggerate its not like with the first, like not with the first two. They leave it quite
Yeah.
yeah, like you said, they leave it quite mysterious for the first two. But with this one, but with Glass Crusade, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and Dial of Destiny, they've definitely gone. Definitely like exaggerated the power
Oh
of
yeah.
these mystical beings. Like Dial of Destiny, for example, the actual like dial it's based on could never like obviously because in the film it's I think it's about time travel,
Yeah.
but the actual dial it's based on it was just used to tell the weather and that was it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, of course, that's all it is. But
yeah.
that's the point of Indiana Jones. But I
Mm.
think an alien crystal skull is just so obviously like there's no mystery behind it to me.
Yeah,
It's like, oh, an alien crystal skull, cool. So aliens just exist in the world of Indiana Jones.
yeah.
Oh, they're like interdimensional beings or some stuff like that, and it just sounds so lame.
Mm,
It's just not as cool as the Ark of the Covenant or
mm,
even the stones or the Holy Grail. Even the Holy Grail's pretty cool.
yeah,
Um, it just feels like it's just like, oh yeah, we wanted to do something about aliens, so we decided to, but it still had to be an Indiana Jones film, so we chose the Crystal Skulls because that's related to an ancient civilization, and like
mm,
it all just feels
yeah,
so by the numbers.
mm,
And I'm also right, and just to kind of bring it up now, I'm going to start talking about Mac.
yeah. Let's talk about Mac.
Okay, I hate this character
Yeah,
with a burning passion. I hate him
mm,
more than any other characters in this, like Mutt and like even Marion Ravenwood to an extent, even though I still think she was quite good in it. I hate this character because he just constantly is double crossing Indiana Jones,
yeah.
and he just keeps him around, and I just
Don't
don't
get it.
get
Yeah,
why. I just don't get why. He's so annoying. And then he doesn't really do anything when he's not double crossing Indiana Jones, and it's just so like
mm,
it's just the worst. It's so bad. Why does he
yeah,
keep constantly doing it for money? Like, all right, cool. What a deep and interesting character.
yeah,
He really needed to be there. It's just
mm,
fucking. Indiana Jones should have just shot him in that hangar. That's what the old Indiana Jones would have done. He would have just shot him.
mm.
And that's
So
the
yeah,
other thing as well.
yeah.
Indiana Jones doesn't do anything like that. He's softened up now, and I'm like, nah, fuck that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I feel like he does get a lot of he does get a lot of good moments though, like particularly during the action sequences when
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
I do like the action scene in the hangar where he's like swinging
mm,
around like on the
yeah,
lights and stuff, and then obviously he tries to swing to the other truck, but then he launches
yeah.
backwards.
He's like, damn, I thought that was closer.
I
Eh.
should have said something like, "Oh, I'm not, like I'm getting a bit too old for this kind of thing." Like that's
Yeah,
definitely something which they're doing with the new film from the trailers, from what I can tell, but probably should
yeah.
have been in this one because
Yeah,
obviously they were yeah,
they because obviously he's a lot more older, but they don't really because that's one of the issues I have. One of the issues I have with this film where they don't actually acknowledge his age.
no, not at all.
They try and claim like, oh, he's old, but he can still do the things he used to do, and it's like there's nothing wrong with like acknowledging the fact that your character has gotten older.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
exactly.
I think they must have thought that oh, if we include like jokes of him going oh my back or this and that, they maybe might have been a bit too
Not even
cheesy,
just
but
that. Like they were obviously trying to they're obviously setting up Mutt to be like the successor to
yeah,
Indiana Jones.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, one, it's Shia LaBeouf, so it wasn't interesting in the first place, and
Mm.
they're not willing to do it.
Mm. Oh no,
Um,
no. Especially after Shia LaBeouf, all the stuff that Shia LaBeouf has
yeah,
been up
well,
to.
yeah, I mean, but obviously
Yeah.
they that wasn't a factor at that stage in
Oh no,
time.
no.
So
I
obviously, so he fights his way out of the warehouse, doesn't he?
yeah, he
And
fights his
then
way out.
the scene everybody loves,
The
which we
fridge,
can all
oh,
agree.
nuke in the
Yes,
fridge.
here we go. The nuke
Yeah.
in the fridge, as we call
Um,
it.
I mean, I will say this it is quite. I do quite like it for the suspense of him trying to figure out because obviously he's in this nuclear testing facility, and
Hmm.
you could see the panic and look on his face where he's just trying like
Okay.
like so, and which you could argue like because he's a lot older, his brain is he doesn't have. He's still an intelligent man, but like the way he was able to very quickly figure stuff out as isn't as quick as it used to be because obviously he's a lot older and stuff like that. He's gone a lot slower, so he's kind of he's kind of
Okay.
using up every last second he can to
Here's
like yeah.
here's the reason why I've got a problem with
Mm,
this scene. Because obviously he gets stuck in a nuclear testing facility and he needs to find his way out of it, which is fine. I
mm,
think that's an interesting set point, and it fits with the time period it's set in, where there were
yeah,
loads of nuclear tests in the Nevada desert.
yeah,
Um, However, there's kind of a major problem I've got with it is the fridge.
mm,
Now, I'm going to just do some basic mathematics at you here. So
mm,
obviously, the big thing with the fridge is that when Indy gets in it, it says it's a lead line fridge on the door,
yeah,
which obviously you think in your brain, okay, that's fine, because obviously that protects against radiation.
yeah,
But let's take a look at a nuclear bomb heat. Let's see how much heat a nuclear bomb can generate, if I can find it.
yeah,
This is just a little bit of science here because I just find this stuff really interesting.
mm,
How
yeah,
much? Because there's kind of two major problems with it really, which is that number one, the explosion power of a nuclear bomb, especially at that close range, would have just destroyed the fridge.
yeah,
It wouldn't have sent it flying. It would have just absolutely decimated it.
mm,
It'll decimate buildings. It'll decimate people. I mean, a nuclear bomb has such a high like melting point that like people who were near the epicenter of a nuclear explosion literally turn to ash.
yeah, yeah.
And I don't know if you know much about the melting point of lead, but it's probably about maybe 300 degrees Celsius.
Ooh,
So, in reality,
in
if we really
reality,
were
yeah,
to get specific, which is why I don't like these whole videos. It's like, oh, it's technically possible. It's like, no, he would have been melted in the fridge.
mm,
He would have literally, the fridge would have melted in onto him, and Indiana Jones would have been left as as like a molten statue.
mm.
That's what would have happened.
That would be
But
that's terrifying.
but um, I also still like it because at least there's a little bit of thought put behind it.
Mm,
I think the only way Indiana Jones really could have survived it if he managed to get underground.
yeah,
That's pretty much the only way he could have probably survived it,
mm,
really.
yeah,
But it still doesn't matter because it's like a nice way to end that scene. I
mm.
actually don't mind this scene too much. I know a lot of people don't like it, but
Yeah, I feel like this film as well, like it came out around the time when the phrase, um, you know that phrase that like a ton of like old school like reviewers and stuff would use, like this art of my childhood. I'm gonna assume you know what I mean when I say art, like
oh yeah, yeah, because that was
yeah,
obviously the big thing. Because a lot of,
yeah,
I mean, there's
like
a whole South Park episode about it. For God's
and
sake,
then you have like guys like Spoonie and stuff like that who would
I can
use
I
that
can, I
constantly.
can understand it because a lot
Yeah,
of Spoonie. I just forgot to remember that guy exists. Sorry.
well, I think a lot of people have forgotten he exists.
Yeah, man. Yeah, we know.
Yeah,
But no, but I think I can understand it to an extent because obviously, I think obviously people have a lot of reverence for those old Indiana Jones films. They are three of the
yeah,
best films ever made. But also, I think the problem with this film is with the time period it was set in. It's
mm,
meant to be this 1950s era sort of like science fiction B movie sort of. That was the paying the tribute to it. But none of those things are from those films in those era are involved in the film at all. There's
yeah.
no flying saucers. There's no scene where Indiana Jones is standing in a server room for 40 minutes because that's what those. Have you ever watched any of those old 1950s B films? That's all they are,
I haven't no, but I've heard of them and stuff.
and they are very, very, very terrible. They're all bad.
Mm,
But that's kind of the charm of those films, is they're like, an alien's come down to Earth and we need to stop it. And then there's literally people standing around a room talking about it for 40 minutes, and then they just
yeah,
have one scene with the alien, and then the film ends.
mm,
That's all it is. But that's not what this film was at
mm,
all. So it's like, I hate that sort of idea that that's what they were trying to do.
yeah.
But whatever. Anyway,
Mm.
so after the nuclear detonation, Indiana Jones is interrogated by the FBI, isn't he?
Yeah, is it FBI or CIA he works for?
It's one or the other. They're both
Yeah,
they're both bad either way, so it's
FBI.
fine.
It's FBI. Yeah, but yeah,
Yeah.
Indiana Jones works for the FBI. When did this happen? When did this happen?
Yeah, this is a whole weird thing. I mean, it's
Like,
like,
I don't mind the idea of him working for the FBI because I guess around the
look,
time of the Cold War, like maybe, but
India. Well, the whole thing that they mention is that obviously Indiana Jones fought in the Second World War,
yeah,
and which he definitely would have done because Indiana Jones is a pretty anti-Nazi.
yeah,
From if the other films are to be believed, and he
mm,
and he probably knew a lot of people who were probably victims of the Holocaust,
yeah,
so he probably felt like some kind of duty to do it. But I don't think I don't think Indiana Jones would have been a Fed. I
Mm.
don't really see how, because FBI didn't really have that much involvement in the Second World War. He probably could have been like, he probably would have been a spy or would have engaged in espionage because that was very common in the Second World War.
Yeah.
That would have made a more interesting film, really, if he had to go undercover into Germany to get
Yeah.
something, to stop
Yeah.
Hitler from starting like some kind of like mystical power or whatever. But yeah,
Yeah.
that would be
Because
cool.
he,
But anyway,
because it's like he's saying like, "Oh, yeah." But I do like how they keep that kind of in mystery, like,
yeah.
where, it's like, "Oh, he works for the FBI now." That's,
Mm.
that's weird. Uh,
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
but
it's like whatever.
yeah, it's like,
FBI. This is
alright.
like the era where a lot of that stuff was starting to become like really sort of like a big part of the culture of America. So I
Yeah.
get they wanted to represent that through India, but I just don't really see him as like a federal agent at all.
Yeah.
I mean, especially if he's still working at the fucking college.
Yeah, exactly. Um, but yeah, I mean, I mean, then he gets described like what happened with the alien and stuff like that. How he got put on a bus where he was
Mm,
with people he wasn't allowed to speak to analyze this creature that they found that he couldn't like something. He said he says something like, "I could seeing something that I couldn't explain,"
yeah.
which is perfect. um, and and then it cuts to the college, and then he gets sacked. What does he get sacked
Well, no,
or
he gets put on
takes?
indefinite
Yeah,
leave.
definitely leave absence. That's it. Yeah, I think.
Something, yeah.
Yeah, the new principal, who's played by Jim Broadbent, he resigns.
Yes, he does.
Yeah, he resigns. It was weird having Jim Broadbent in there. I guess, well, 'cause the actor who played Marcus had passed away by then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it makes
Uh,
sense to just like put in a placeholder actor. And like
mm.
Jim Broadbent's a good one to do.
Oh
So
yeah,
like yeah, fair enough.
yeah, like, yeah. Yeah, and Jim Broadbent's always a good actor though.
I like Jim Broadbent. Yeah, he's a
Mm.
good actor.
Yeah, he's a very likable actor. You know, his character doesn't he doesn't his character isn't on screen much to make an impression.
No,
But
but
you
they
know,
just needed someone to play like a
they need someone to
adjunct
fill in the
professor, yeah.
yeah to fill in the role
And you're
of
not going to say no to Indiana Jones, are
oh
you? Even
god
if it's a
no,
shit one. Like
yeah,
I wouldn't, even though I'd
like
be in it.
yeah, exactly. But there's at that point where you start to see him kind of, his dad's passed away, Marcus has passed away, and he's moving on somewhere else, and
Hmm.
old age is, I think that's kind of the building
This
blocks
is
of
kind of the moment
yeah,
where like bits of like him being old would have been like a better thing to sort of put
yeah,
in.
where they,
It's
if
like,
they
oh, my time's running out. I'm being left
mm,
behind by the new world, kind of thing.
yeah, which is
My
a bit
time has passed and gone, kind of thing. Which is what they're doing with the new one.
yeah,
Obviously,
yeah,
you can tell from the trailers that that's what they're doing, which is fine. I'm okay with it. It's just,
mm,
yeah, they should have done it in this film instead, but they wanted to focus on stuff that didn't matter.
yeah.
Um,
Maybe I don't. I feel like maybe they thought maybe at the time they thought it'd be too cliche to do that. Maybe I'm not too sure because I know, like as in like like oh
well,
yeah
I think they
yeah
were planning to do more, like you said, so they weren't going to
yeah
do that straight away.
yeah like the
So
fifth one
yeah,
and the sixth one. So maybe that was their idea of oh
maybe by the end of
yeah
that trilogy, they were going to do Mutt taking over as the new sort of Indiana Jones or whatever,
yeah which
which was
didn't
never going to
happen.
happen.
Which just didn't happen.
Yeah.
And then we have speaking of Mutt, he gets on a train station and Mutt shows up on his
Yes, he
motorcycle,
does. He does
and then
indeed.
somehow
To stop him.
Mutt's able to stop the train from moving, and Indy's able to get off.
Yeah, I mean, it logically doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah.
But I will say the scene following this in that little diner, I actually really like.
Oh yeah, I love that scene
I
because
really like that scene. It's got a
yes,
lot of good little
mm,
character moments in it that I really
yeah,
enjoy. Like when
you
Mutt takes the beer from like the passing waitress, and he's going to start drinking it, but then Indy
yeah
manages to take it off of him and put it back on
yeah
the when it comes past, to show that it shows that Mutt's like this young rebellious like guy who's
mm,
sort of you
yeah
know he's kind of like the opposite of Indiana Jones in a lot of ways. Like he doesn't have any respect for anyone, and he's like
he's a
he's
greaser
not.
basically. Yeah
Yeah, he's a greaser. Yeah, and he's not as
yeah
He's not showing off his intelligence the way Indiana Jones does. But Indiana Jones immediately starts to gravitate towards him as a father figure, which is
yeah
because obviously he's his son,
yeah
as we learn later in the film. So and then yeah, I really like the whole thing as well, where he starts a fight to get Indy out of the bar. Yeah, it just works.
yeah
And
it
that whole
does
scene is really fun, and the character they bounce off each other really well. It's
mm.
just a shame the rest of the film doesn't really do
Yeah,
that.
and the chase scene, especially like the first chase scene in there, where he's on a motorcycle and
Yeah,
it's running away from these
and they're being
Russian
chased by
soldiers, Russian spies. Yeah,
KBG
Yeah,
KBG. Is that
KBG,
what it is?
I think so.
KGB, sorry, KGB.
Mm.
KGB agents. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um. Yeah.
And then it's a very good scene, and I love the ending when they fall into the library and one of the students asks him, Dr. Jones, would you say just asks him like
Yeah,
a question, and Dr. Jones's whole thing is like, you gotta get out of the library.
yeah, and obviously, Mutt tells him about
Ox and his mother and
Oxen, his
yeah.
mum, and like
Mhm. What did you think of John Hurt in this movie, by the
John
way?
Hurt.
Yeah.
I mean, his character's kind of just not got really much to do because he's just playing a dude who's like who's basically doesn't have a brain anymore.
He's
Like, I don't think it's the kind of thing where John Hurt could really show off his acting chops, really, if I'm being honest
yeah.
with you. But I mean, that's fine, whatever. Yeah,
Mm,
he did the best he can with the script he was given.
mm. Yeah, exactly. Um, so yeah, John Hurt was a good was a John Hurt was decent
Mm.
as Ox. Um, again it was kind of difficult because obviously he is playing a guy whose brain has not it can't function properly because
Well,
it's
yeah, because it's
been
been wiped by aliens.
yeah overrun by
By aliens.
overrun by aliens, and then
I
you
Do you
have the
know what? Sorry, go on.
no, it's all right, you go first.
That's fine. I was going to say, just to kind of like briefly touch in on that, there is a way I think this film could have been more interesting, but I'm going to save it to the end of the conversation actually about how I would have done this film if I was
Mhm.
doing it. But anyway, yeah, yeah. What were you going to say?
Um, but then obviously, well, we get to the temple,
Mm,
and you see Ox is all like kind of crazy kind of things, and you see
yeah.
Shia LaBeouf getting a bit upset
Mm.
because his friends kind of gone crazy, and then they go to this other
Well, yeah,
temple.
more than a friend, he's kind of like his adopted father, really, isn't he?
Yeah,
Yeah,
uh,
he's the man who essentially raised him.
yeah, and then you get to the other temple. They get attacked by the civilians. They find the
Hmm.
crystal skull, and it turns out that Ox put it back where he found it,
Yeah,
uh, because he because obviously he saw what it could do, and he didn't want anyone else to like
yeah.
have that.
That's what it's implied, at least,
Mm.
anyway. Before he sort of
Yeah,
lost his mind.
which is kind of weird because it's like, oh, he put it back where he found it.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and yeah, which is odd, but all right. And then they come out, and then they get captured by the Russians, and then they get taken to the camp, and then that's when he gets reunited with Marion.
And it's
Uh,
like, whoa, we know
whoa.
her.
I mean, to be fair though, they don't exactly keep it a secret because she gets mentioned at the in the diner scene.
That's true. Yeah, she
Yeah,
does.
I think he just didn't know which Marion it was because he says, look, I've been from a lot of Marions.
Yeah.
I do like how they obviously go more into the history of how they were going to get married,
Hmm.
but he ran off before the wedding. 3 days, I think it
Yeah.
was. Um, which is great. Which is what do you think about that? Do you think that kind of continues the whole kind of dickish kind of attitude of Indiana Jones, or do you think?
I mean, I get it to an extent.
Mm,
But the problem is it feels like a retread of like the story and plot elements from Raiders of the Lost Ark, really, more than anything.
it
I
does
get what
feel,
they were
yeah,
going. I get what they were going for, but I just don't like. It's just the same thing that it always is. It's like oh, as we learn, obviously, that Mutt's meant to be his son.
yeah,
Um, I don't know. It just kind of seems strange to me that Marion didn't really involve Indy in any way, shape, or form. I didn't tell him, but maybe she was just angry at him. I don't know. But
yeah,
I mean, they've had a troubled relationship, so I suppose it makes sense, really, more than
yeah,
anything. But
yeah,
yeah, I mean, they wanted to obviously give Indiana Jones a bit more of a like a relationship with more so than just another sidekick. It had to be blood relation, which I
mm,
understand, and it does lead to that really funny line where obviously he's saying, "Ah, look, you don't need school, and like you'll be fine
yeah.
on your own." And then obviously when she
He
tells him
finds
it's his
out,
son, he's
yeah.
like, "Why didn't you? Why did you stop him? Why didn't you stop him from leaving school?"
Why didn't you finish school?
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
it's pretty
mhm.
good. I
I
like that idea that it's like as soon as he realizes he's his son, he goes immediate father mode kind of
Yeah,
thing, and I really
yeah.
enjoy that
Dad
as
mode
like a
like
joke.
kicks
Yeah,
in.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of sad though because in the new one, their marriage is over.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
they're separated.
I
Um,
mean, I mean, this is kind of the thing though, where it's like it's all retconning like that film because nobody likes Crystal Skull anymore now.
yeah,
Even if they enjoyed it at the time, everybody goes Crystal Skull's bad, so they're just retconning it because that's what they always do. They're just like, oh,
mm,
no, these things didn't happen. Don't worry
yeah,
about it. So Indiana Jones is he's divorced from Marion again, and
yeah,
that his son is nowhere to be seen. Don't worry, he's not replacing Indiana Jones in any way, shape, or form.
yeah.
And it's like, yeah, it's just controlling it,
Mm.
and just yeah, but
Yeah.
whatever.
So, but yeah, so we get that. quite funny scene where they try to escape. Well, there's that scene first where Indy's looking into the eyes of the skull, and he's starting to
Yeah,
get
yeah, yeah.
quite
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
hypnotized by its
I
power.
think I think the other problem with this whole thing with the crystal skull, because obviously the whole plot of the Russians is they want to take it to because obviously it's well documented that not just the Russians but Americans as well
Yeah.
had investigative put research into psychic abilities, and obviously they wanted
Mm.
to use the alien skulls as a way to amplify that in the Russians anyway.
Yeah.
And but the problem is you don't really see that being used in any way that makes it threatening to
Mm.
like the plot.
Yeah.
Like imagine if say like the skull was being used like they maybe there's a scene where they go back to America with the skull and then they're like, aha, we're gonna with this device it'll control everyone in the city and then Indiana Jones has
Mm.
to stop it. I know that's really basic, but
Yeah.
it's more threatening than them just going to the temple and yeah.
Mm.
And then obviously
Mm.
there's this weird moment where Indiana Jones helps the Russians to get to the temple, which is like, what?
Mm.
Why are you doing that? It's so
Yeah.
ridiculous. Yeah.
Um. Yeah, he helps. Which part is that one again? Is that at the very end or?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not at the very end, but it's when they're in the camp. He starts helping them with the map and stuff like
Oh
that, and
yeah,
then
yeah,
Mutt
yeah.
tries to
I
steal it
th-
and run off, and like it's
I
such
th-
a weird moment.
I think the
It
reason
feels
why
so out of nowhere.
the reason why he's helping them is just because he knows that if he doesn't, they'll probably just
Nah,
yeah,
I don't know. I just find it really difficult to believe as
mm,
like a plot motivation for Indiana Jones.
yeah,
I don't know. I don't know. That's just me personally, but yeah, but then obviously there's a scene as well where Indiana Jones is stuck in the quicksand as well. Oh yeah, that's with Marion as well. And like
mm,
throws a snake at him.
yeah,
He's like, grab onto it, and he's like, no, anything else.
yeah.
That's a good scene.
Oh yeah, that was a good scene. Yeah, and then that's when she tells him that he's his son, and then you have the scene where Matt's like, "Oh, my dad was a pilot, not a teacher." I was like, "Oh god."
Yeah.
Uh, fucking, and then that's when that car chase ensues, which is
Well, yeah,
pretty.
because obviously they find out they need to go to to an ancient city, don't they?
Yeah.
Which is where the skull is from. And then this idea
Mm,
is like, oh, if we go here, we'll find all. We'll something will happen. I
mm,
don't know, whatever. They're just kind of following Oxley at this stage. He was
yeah.
writing like weird stuff.
Mm.
Um,
And
yeah,
then
and then on the way there, yeah, they obviously have this big chase scene.
yeah, which is pretty cool actually. I do like that chase scene,
Mm.
except for the Tarzan part where he's swinging on the vines. I
I mean,
fuck
the
that
whole
shit.
thing's ridiculous. I can kind of buy it because it's a little bit of a ridiculous sort of like
Mm,
homage to like old serials again. But
mm.
yeah, I mean, with this film kind of being a bit of tonally all over the place, it's a bit difficult to swallow a lot of stuff sometimes.
Yeah, the look of it as well. Like it's very. This film looks very shiny. That's kind of
Well, yeah, it's that early
yes,
CGI where they were
yeah.
using all green screens and stuff, and it
It
just looks
has
bad. Yeah,
it has the same kind of color palette, lighting kind of thing as Scream 4, which I think came out around the same time.
yeah.
Yeah, where it's very
That's
bright
what they were all doing around that time. That sort of like because they were trying to get
lens.
use artificial lighting and stuff like that
Yeah,
to make it look like there was light streaming down, and it just looked really bad. It looked like a
like
terrible video game.
yeah. Look, I call it lens flare lighting because that's kind of what it
Yeah.
looks like.
And also,
Um,
I just think a lot of the action in this scene is pretty ridiculous, even by Indiana Jones standards. It doesn't feel grounded in reality.
hmm. Um, and then, well, I mean, I do enjoy the chase scene, but and you think I do like the part where you think it's over when they crash, and
Mm.
then suddenly fucking army ants come in,
Oh
start
yeah,
fucking
that whole where Indiana Jones has to fight a big guy again.
yeah. I do
Oh,
like it.
and Mutt and Irina have that sword fight, don't they, as well,
Yeah,
which was pretty good.
which is pretty
And I
good.
like the
Yeah,
whole bit where Marion's like, "Oh yeah, remember your thrusting pose and
yeah.
stuff
Like
like that."
she
Yeah,
goes
like
she goes wrong.
there are
Yeah.
elements in this film that are like, "Oh, that's funny," but like
Mm,
overall, yeah,
mm,
yeah. So then obviously Indiana Jones fights the big Russian man in the
yeah.
circle of fire ants. For some reason, they don't just all run to the middle. Whatever.
Yeah.
Who
And
cares?
then and then
Oh
Marion
no, it's the
drives
crystal skull. Sorry,
yeah, the
that
crystal
stops them.
yeah, the crystal skull's
Ah,
the one
all
that
right, that's okay then.
stops them from killing like eating them.
Yeah, I remember that now.
I do like that scene though where Indy knocks like, knocks the Russian guy into the like and he falls into the army ants. And then like
Yes,
they're dragging him into like their nest.
and it's like,
It's like
"Wah!"
that scene was quite creepy, like
For the
especially when they
record,
yeah.
army ants don't do that.
Yeah, oh yeah, obviously, yeah. They don't actually do that.
They
Could you
don't
imagine?
do that.
Yeah.
That'd be fucking scary, man.
Mm,
I know that army ants can attack people, and it probably could eat like a dead human pretty easily. But I think I think anything beyond that is pretty much fiction.
Yeah,
Oh well.
And then Marion dries off a cliff, and then they fall down 3
Oh yeah, and then
waterfalls.
they fall down into the down several waterfalls.
Yeah,
They end up at the bottom. There's
and
that
then,
scene where Marion's holding the steering wheel and chuckling, and then you're just like, "Ah, get up, come on, we're moving."
come
Oh,
on,
and of course, we Oxley, not Oxley, sorry, what's his name? Mac reveals
Mac.
that he's a CIA agent,
Yeah, oh yeah, like,
and they're
double
like, "Oh,
agent.
what? You're a CIA? Why didn't you say so?" He's like,
Yeah.
"I'm a double agent, mate.
Oh, double agent, mate, and
I'm
it's
a
like,
fucking double agent."
I don't get how Indy falls for that, like, come at least could you.
Yeah, that's what I mean about Mac. He's
Yeah,
just such a ridiculous character that doesn't do anything in the plot, and
yeah,
he's just there to just double cross people. It's so ridiculous.
yeah. And then they get to the, temple, and then they're running away from these, natives, like, well, not natives, the people who live on that in the temple, like, protecting them, which
Yeah, I mean,
which is a clear kind of throwback to it's just to the start of Raiders when he's running away from the
they're
locals.
obviously all have just remained in the walls for however long they've been there for.
Yeah,
Pretty good.
which is quite creepy.
Pretty good.
Yeah, I love I like how the Russians just kill them with guns and, like, when they
Well, yeah,
show up.
that's what you would do, wouldn't you?
Yeah,
You'd be like, some guy's coming at me with a spear, and when you've got a gun, you're just gonna shoot him.
they're just like, "Ha, you have darts? Boom, there you
Yeah, and
go."
obviously they made their way through that temple, and then like
Yeah,
yeah,
and then they get the
and
gold,
then
and Mac tries to get as much gold as possible, while
oh, love
Elena.
gold, and they stole that from the Mummy. All right,
Mm,
I'm gonna say it. I think they
yeah,
stole that scene from the Mummy, and
yeah,
it was done much better in the Mummy.
yeah, and then they get to the final part, which
I
is
do.
I would say that the final sequence is it's okay, but it's a little bit weak. Uh,
I think, and this kind of will go into the stuff that I'll talk about sort of when we're just to kind of wrap up this. But I think it's like, why did they do this? What was the reason to do it? What did they think was going to happen?
yeah,
And
I
it's
think
like,
it's just
yeah,
not as big and as grand as the other ones. Like, the other ones were the first three films. They were like these big, huge climaxes. This one's just very simple. Like, they put the skull back. All the alien skeletons combined together to
merge into
create this
one.
merge the one alien.
They run
Everyone
out of the falling temple.
everyone else escapes. Kate Blanchett dies,
Her face
and then
explodes, which is actually pretty cool. Not
yeah,
gonna lie.
it's a good effect. And then a fucking flying saucer pops up and flies away,
hmm hmm
and that's
Now, I think that would have been way cooler if we didn't know it was aliens.
yeah,
If that had happened
exactly.
at the end of the film and it was so shocking, it's like, what the fuck? Like, you
Mm,
know what I mean? Like aliens?
yeah,
Whoa, that's yeah. You don't really know more than that. I think
yeah.
that would have been way better. But
Mm.
then the film just kind of ends with them all, and
Getting
then Mac.
married.
Oh yeah, Mac gets drawn into the portal. Yeah, that
Yeah,
happens.
Mac dies.
It
Fucking
just it's like who cares? All right,
yeah,
cool. I feel nothing for this character, so he
yeah,
literally couldn't have been there in the entire, and the film would have just been fine.
yeah.
I don't know why they put him in. And then yeah, it just cuts to the wedding. They get and Oxley's better as well.
Mm.
We love that.
I do like the fact that he got married. I feel like that was. I don't know if that was, like, maybe. I do like the fact that he got married at the end.
If it was the end of the films
Yeah,
and it
like, if
was
this
like an
was.
actual concrete ending, I think that would have been like a good send off to him to be
Mm,
like, all right, he's gotten to the end now. He's settling down. He's not going to go on adventures anymore. He's
yeah,
left his job at the university. Like that would have been a better like satisfying story
yeah,
conclusion. And then obviously Mutt would have taken over as we saw with the hat thing, but then the fake out, and it's like, oh
yeah.
yeah, no, Indiana Jones isn't finished just yet. Don't you
Not yet,
worry.
Sonny.
But then yeah, that's
Yeah.
kind of the end of the film, really, isn't it?
Yeah. So overall, I mean, again, like, I don't hate this film as much as people do. I can get why it gets the hate
Mm,
it does. I think it's I think it's okay. Like, it's an
yeah.
okay. I think it's an
It's
okay little kind of bonus adventure where we get to catch up with Indy after so
I
many
just
years and see how he's been.
I think if the character development stuff was just more interesting, I'd
Mm,
probably like the film more.
yeah.
The only thing I really like in it is just some of the set pieces and some of the jokes, and I
Mm,
think it just comes across as just sort of like a bit bloated and just like sort of like why are characters doing the things they're doing? There's no real
mm,
plot or theme there really that's very interesting,
yeah.
and like compared to the previous films, it's just doesn't stand up. What I think would have made the film better, now I can bring this in, which I've been hinting at from the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah. You go for it. Go for it.
Connor.
Mm,
I think what would have been more interesting for this film is instead of doing this crystal skull business,
yeah.
have it be that there's just like a mysterious artifact. It's got some kind of weird telekinetic power to it. We don't really know what it is. And then obviously the point of the film is they're trying to figure out where this artifact came from and stop the Russians from using it to, like, or like the Nazis or whoever you did in the film, to create a super weapon based off of it to
Yeah.
take over America or whatever.
Mm.
It can be America, we'll find whatever. But then, and the stuff in the film kind of alludes to this thing being like, is it man made? Is it alien? That they don't really say anything specifically about it. There's no specific evidence to prove it's aliens.
Yeah.
But then you get to the end of the film where the artifact is being used by this alien creature, which you probably don't even see, which would probably be way more scary and cooler. Would make the
Mm.
final scene feel a bit more like a classic Indiana Jones ending,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then maybe you see the flying saucer go for the end, and I think that would have been more satisfying
Mm.
rather than it being like, oh, this skull. We think it might be aliens, and it's like, yeah, of course it's an alien. Look at the skull design. What are you
Yeah.
talking about? It's the lack of logic in the film is the problem. There's
Yeah.
no there's no clear cut, thorough logic compared to the other films, even compared to Temple of Doom,
Mm.
which
Yeah. Which
is
was
not
even
perfect, but
it's not perfect, but yeah, that had
does
a
a damn
little
better job than
yeah.
that.
Yeah. Um yeah,
Yeah,
I agree with that. I can understand that
I just
from a
think it would have been
sense.
more satisfying. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, it's fine. Yeah,
Yeah.
no,
It's a
whatever.
again, it's a
It's a
nice little
classic 4 out of 10 film.
nah, 3 out of 10.
3, yeah, go on, 3.
3 out of 10.
3 out of 10 film.
3 out of 5, 3 out of 10 easy.
Got some good little moments in it, but overall
Mm,
pretty disappointing.
yeah, and Mutt's kind of unbearable.
I still think it's Mac for me is the worst character. I just don't
He
understand why he's in the film.
I yeah, Mac I can understand. Mutt's just a bit annoying really. It's just Shia LaBeouf being Shia LaBeouf back in the day before he went crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
And yes, that's pretty much it. That's all of the Indiana Jones films.
It is.
So we
It
should
took
probably
a long while.
yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Indiana Jones and Dial of Destiny.
And the Dial of Destiny.
What do we hope? What are our hopes for? What are our hopes for?
Mm.
What are you hoping for, Alex?
My hope is it's better than Indiana Jones and Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Yeah.
If it can do that, I'll be relatively happy.
Are you have you seen any of the trailers so far? If you've
I've seen some of the trailers. I like the idea of it
mm,
because I think it does something that Crystal Skull should have done, which is it plays around with the idea of Indy being sort of past his prime and, like,
yeah,
he's looking to retire,
yeah,
and I think that's a vastly more interesting story than
mm,
him just trying to act like the old character that he is from, like, these films that have not been around for so
mm,
long, and is just so unbelievable that the idea of Indiana Jones in his 50s is still running around doing, these ridiculous stunts that don't make
mm,
any sense for him to be doing.
yeah,
Um, I also like the idea of him being teamed up with with another female co-star that's not necessarily a love interest, which is what I believe it is, because I
yeah.
think it's his goddaughter.
Yeah, she's his goddaughter.
Yeah,
So I think the idea is that her father, who's played by Toby Jones, because there's a flashback at the start
yeah, of
where with Nazis on the train, and they get the
course, yeah.
dial, and then her father becomes quite obsessed with the dial, and um, she comes back to him years later, and they have to try and like because I think the Nazis are after it.
Hmm.
Because what I think it is that if well, they haven't actually confirmed it's time travel, but I've got a feeling that it's something to do with time travel though. Like
Yeah, because I think
yeah,
the kind of general plot of this film, from what I've seen, which I do like the basic premise of, is that I think it starts off with the stuff where Indiana Jones is younger again,
yeah,
using that face capture technology,
de
where
aging,
the de-aging technology, which I'm okay with. I mean,
which
you might as well.
I've
Okay.
heard I've heard mixed things about that from like reviews where
Yeah, I
some
mean,
people
it's
have
not
said
going to be perfect, but if they're
mm,
going to do it, they're going to do it. So
mm,
that's fine,
yeah,
whatever. But I like the idea of it starting off being there, and obviously there's like a little cold open where we set up the
yeah,
premise of the film.
yeah,
Obviously, Indiana Jones is fighting Nazis again, which is exactly what it should always be.
mm,
Um, and then, from what I can tell from what I'm reading, obviously this is set during the space race.
yeah, set during the space race.
Yeah, and obviously Indiana Jones is being sort of forced to step down from his teaching position because he's contested that NASA and the US government are using former Nazi scientists on these
Yeah,
programs, because
mm,
obviously, which is something that he should always be. Indiana Jones is an anti-Nazi.
yeah,
He hates Nazis. He doesn't like them. So obviously, as soon if they're being used in the government for something like that, he's going to be like, no.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. And he's a conscientious and he's an objector to that kind of stuff, which is why he's being forced to step down. But
Mm.
he's got to get one last one in just to stop some Nazi scum, eh?
Yeah,
That's
I
what we
do.
want to see.
I did like the trailers that the trailers that I've seen. I do. The problem is that I have though is the one thing, yeah, because the reviews are again. I wouldn't normally care about reviews, but I am seeing like quite because all the Indiana Jones films for the most part got pretty good reception when they came out. This
Yeah.
is the one that's gotten the even Kingdom of the Skull got a pretty okay kind of response. But this one's really gotten a very mixed. There's just the definition of mixed. And I don't know sure why it is. I don't know if it could. My theory is that it could be because it's being marketed as the last one, and that maybe
Um,
it's just. But some people feel like
it
this
just
is just
depends.
isn't.
It just depends on what they do with the plot points. Really, that's I think is
Yeah,
the most important thing for any film is
yeah,
the plot points in the previous Indiana Jones films, even Temple of Doom. They
mm,
have a beginning, middle, and there's a follow through that goes through it. There's
yeah,
character arcs and the structure, and it just makes the film satisfying to watch.
mm,
And that's what think is the big worry I've got with this film is they're not going to do that because films aren't written like that anymore. They're
mm,
just not written like that, unfortunately. They don't bother with structure. They're all about we just want to fit in as many references and as many scenes that have the
mm,
characters doing
yeah,
things that we want them to do because we've market tested it,
mm,
Connor, and we
yeah,
found that we're going to potentially get 25% more viewers if this
yeah,
happens in the film. That's the kind of thing that's the way big Hollywood films are written now. So, and
mm.
it's no wonder that potentially they're moving to like AI algorithms and stuff like that.
Oh god, yeah. Fuck's sake.
Like they're
Come
just
on.
going to do it because it's just like it undercuts.
Mm,
It means they don't have to pay anyone to write these films, relatively
yeah.
speaking, for the majority, and
Mm,
they can just get scripts like that, like with a click of a button. Basically, it
yeah.
just makes sense that they would do that, which is obviously why there's the writer strikes in America at the moment because
Oh
they
yeah.
feel that their livelihoods are at risk because they're already not getting paid enough.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, and if in a few years, it's very likely that all of your jobs are basically obsolete.
Mm,
So I can understand that.
yeah. It's Yeah, and I mean, because I've got all the reviews up here right now. It's just the definition of mixed, really. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm using Rotten Tomatoes just because that's the one I would go for, just for like a collection of reviews. But
yeah.
it's
Or
so
IMDb is a good one as well.
mm,
Like, they both
like
take the
mm,
review algorithm and just see what happens with it. Really.
yeah, and I'm yeah, I do agree with what you said, but I feel like maybe part of my theory like is that I do think because this is the final time, at least for Harrison Ford anyway, that maybe that's why people just feel like this isn't as great of an ending for this era as much as because when you market something as like the final finale, this is the last one,
Mm.
you have to really make that ending count because otherwise, otherwise you risk,
I think I think as well though, it's just because
mm.
people know that that's potentially not the case.
Oh yeah,
Everybody knows that
exactly.
there's. I mean,
It's like with it's
yeah, I
like
was
with
gonna. Oh, sorry, you go on.
it's like with John Wick, like John
I
Wick
was
Chapter
literally
4.
just gonna say that. I
Yeah,
literally was just because I watched it the other
Ev
day.
yeah, everyone thought it was the last one, and then a couple of weeks ago, no, John
Like
Wick
John
5's
Wick
ended up,
Five's coming out, and it's
and
like
it's
what?
like,
He
what? Why?
literally fucking and that's the problem I've got with the way it works now because nothing feels genuine anymore in
Yeah,
Hollywood.
this is the
There's
problem.
no. It's like you call this the final Indiana Jones film, but if it does financially well at the box office,
Which it won't.
all right, let's fucking do it. Let's bring back
Yeah.
Indiana Jones.
It's it probably won't because it's projected to only make 60 million opening weekend, which is
But that's like you
mm,
just you won't know that until it happens.
yeah, yeah, that's true.
Unfortunately, I think people will still go to watch it just because of the controversy around it.
Maybe, yeah.
Like that stuff has happened before in the past. I mean, it just depends if people really care about
Mm.
Indiana Jones.
But I feel like as well, like when you're saying about that, Hollywood just doesn't understand what endings are anymore. Like it's
Well,
just
yeah,
one of
because
those
they just
things
want to
where
make money. That's
yeah,
the problem.
exactly. It's like, like this thing, it's like again, I mentioned this before, but they're making Toy Story 5 and like we had two endings. We had 3 and 4, and now we've got a third. And it's like how many fucking endings do we need? Do you know what I mean? It's just like give up.
Yeah.
Just end it. Just
Well,
end
they're
just
not. They're not going to do it, unfortunately, because they're just going to keep it going as long as possible. But
mm,
I think though that we're now starting to see what I believe, at the very least, anyway, is a trend where people are getting sick and tired of things being rebooted constantly.
Yeah, I think that's
And like,
happening.
there's new films coming out, and I think people are just going like, "I don't care anymore. I just want the films to be good." Like, people
Mm.
have been absolutely popping off about the new Spider-Man film, and while that
Oh
is a
yeah,
sequel and obviously part of a franchise,
it's
um,
fantastic. By the way, fantastic
yeah,
movie.
I know, I need to watch it. I will get round
Mm.
to it,
I've actually got
but it's yeah.
I'm actually uploading my latest podcast episode, which is a Spider-Man retrospective, which has taken 2 days.
Mm.
It's just finished uploading on YouTube, and it's taken 2 days to upload it.
Did you which Spider-Man films did you review the
Oh,
originals?
all like all of the Raimi films, the Mark Webb films, the Tom Holland films,
Damn.
and Across Spider Verse and Into the Spider Verse.
You are dedicated, Connor, I'll give you that.
It's nearly 4 hours long.
There's only 3 Spider-Man films that matter, the original three films and the animated one, and potentially the new animated one as well
Yeah,
if it's as good as people say it is.
yeah, man. But yeah, Dial of Destiny. I mean, I've still got my hopes up. I feel like I don't know. I mean, because
Um,
there's been plenty of and there's because I've seen a lot of YouTube reviewers that I watch. A lot of them have said, like Chris Stockman, for example. He actually made a really quite positive review the other day. And I trust Chris Stuckman. He's a pretty good, and like I like his
yeah,
reviews and I trust his opinion most of the time.
mhm.
So and so a lot of them are quite not fighting back, but a lot more are like we don't know what the critics are talking about. But
I think it just depends really,
yeah,
doesn't it? 'Cause, you
mm,
can never be too sure. Because there are films which have been, like, panned by critics and then years later have become, like, films which
yeah.
people would consider part of
Well,
the
well,
legendary.
well, the film that you and I last talked about is now the second highest grossing animated movie ever made.
Well, of course, yeah. I mean, it doesn't yeah, I mean, it's not a critical masterpiece, but it does get the job done.
Exactly. So yeah, we'll have to see what happens with Dial Destiny, but I really hope it's good. And yeah, so that's pretty much it. I think we can end it there.
Yeah, that's it. I think that's a good place to end it.
That's the Indiana Jones retrospective. I'm assuming you're going to be coming back for our discussion on Dial of Destiny, Alex.
Well, someone's gotta do it, haven't they? And
Yeah,
it might as well be me.
yeah, exactly. And yeah, so thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you, Alex, for coming back again. You can find the Chevrolet Studios LinkedIn page in the
Thank
description
you.
below. And is the website still?
It's down
Uh,
for the time being. We'll be
mm,
bringing it back up soon, sooner
yeah,
rather than later.
it's under reservations. Let's just say that it's being
It's been
rebuilt.
renovated from the
It's
ground
being
up.
it's being rebooted, like Hollywood and all
I
these
uh,
franchises.
I I managed to get some Nazi scientists to rebuild the website.
Oh, nice. Oh, nice. That's good.
Nice.
That's pretty good. But yeah, thank you for listening, and
No worries.
we'll see you next time.
I'm
So,
getting on my horse and riding off in sunset. Bye.
bye.